The narrow sea lay behind him like a sheet of hammered pewter, bruised clouds dragging a smear of violet across a dawn too weary to burn properly. Tyrion Lannister stood at the clipping prow of the Braavosi galley hard-hand, yellow lanternlight guttering behind his stooped silhouette, and told himself, for the 1000th time since he slipped the chains of King's Landing, that betrayal is a wine best swallowed slowly. Vengeance, he reminded himself with each briny gust, tastes sweeter when served not merely cold but unforeseen, a cup pressed into your enemy's hand with a dwarf's courteous bow. He had chosen Cersei. The thought felt like sucking on an old copper coin, metallic, faintly bloody, but familiar. Cersei, queen of his nightmares, mother of monstrosities, lioness who would sooner see him strangled with his own intestines than seated at her small council, was at least predictable. Daenerys Targaryen, breaker of chains and burner of cities he had never walked, was not. Stories drifted westward like smoke, silver-haired girl queens, winged shadows hotter than forge fires, armies of eunuchs who marched in perfect silence save for the hiss of sand beneath their sandals. Tyrion trusted stories as he trusted empty cups, promises of more, but offering nothing until filled. He turned from the rail as the captain's bell tolled a sluggish 2. The hard-hand slid toward the coast of Slaver's Bay, gulls wheeling overhead with ragmouthed cries. Endless ochre dunes gave way to the broken teeth of Meereen's pyramids, their limestone skins scarred by new banners. A black three-headed dragon, stitched hastily but defiantly, flapped against a rising blush of dawn. Even from this distance Tyrion imagined he could smell the city, a stewing pot of cinnamon, corpse rot, and human need. "I come as an envoy," he rehearsed, tugging the collar of a plain linen jerkin as if it were the purple of a hand. "I come seeking refuge, offering wisdom. And beneath that polished veneer, like rust under guilt, the truth. I come with daggers for your heart, mother of dragons, and every smile I offer is another blade you will not see until it blooms red between your ribs." The dockmaster of Meereen greeted him with perfunctory suspicion, twin scribes flanking him like parchment-rattling crows. Tyrion played his part. A cracked grin, a small bow too precise to be mocking, a pouch of silver that clinked as if it shared a private joke with him alone. They waved him through the harbor gate, past a file of Unsullied whose bronze masks revealed nothing, though Tyrion fancied the nearest might have widened his eyes behind the slits when the dwarf winked. Varys' absence lingered beside him like a missing shadow. The spider had always known how to spin silk between men's hearts. Tyrion would have welcomed the eunuch's counsel, but Varys had scuttled elsewhere after their flight from Westeros. Perhaps, Tyrion mused, the master of whisperers served already at Daenerys' elbow, a pale griot whispering of spiderwebs and shattered thrones. No matter. Spiders could be crushed under a heel if one stepped softly enough. He secured a suite of stagnant chambers in a merchant's hospice that smelled of lye, ink, and the desperation of scribes who rented quills by the hour. From its lattice balcony he watched the city breathe. Streets wound like intestines around the Great Pyramid, rag-stitched tents sprouted where plazas once gleamed. Slaves newly loosed from chains moved with the halting gait of dogs unaccustomed to open gates, unsure whether the world beyond would feed or flay them. It pleased him how fragile freedom looked up close. That evening, under a moon swollen and suspicious as an overripe grape, Tyrion slipped into a tavern where wine was ladled from blackened cauldrons large enough to stew a man-whole. He found company. Disaffected younkish factors, a bored captain of the Second Sons, 2 priests of the Red Temple whose eyes glittered with the same fanatic fire he had glimpsed once in Stannis Baratheon's camp. He drank sparingly, spoke rarely, listened always. Information flowed toward him as water seeks a hollow. The fragile equilibrium Daenerys held over Meereen was cracking. Sons of the Harpy struck nightly, the noble great masters financed sabotage, and the Dragon Queen's council bickered over each fresh corpse dragged from an alley at dawn. Perfect, he thought. Cersei would be delighted. He pictured his sister's thin smile, that cat-mouthed twitch of triumph. The image chilled him, yet he savored it. Days bled together. Tyrion cultivated the city the way a careful vintner tends vines, pruning here, watering gossip there, training shoots of rumor along trellises of fear. He fed coin to ragpickers and promises to cutthroats. He whispered to priests that Daenerys spurned their god, to freedmen that she would trade their newborn freedom for peace with Yunkai, to Sel's words that her coffers dwindled faster than her patience. Lies, half-truths, and truths sharpened to razors, they were all vines he could twist into a noose. He sent missives westward on swift ships, lacquered scroll cases bearing the crowned black lion seal he had melted from a stolen brooch. Each letter dripped honeyed venom. "Your Grace, the dragon bitch's wings are fraying." A tug here, a cut there, and she will fall screaming into the sea. Send grain ships disguised as gifts, their hulls stuffed with wildfire. Promise Yukaya Lannister loan at half interest to resupply their siege engines. Whisper through the Iron Bank that investing in liberation is folly, profit lies in chains, not in broken links. He wrote these things with steady hand and sealed them with red wax still warm enough to sting his thumb, pain to remind him of purpose. Meanwhile, he courted Daenerys' favor. The Mother of Dragons received him in a hall of marble pillars veined like old bone. She wore no crown, her hair was a fall of molten silver, her eyes a shade of dawn that no summer sky in Westeros had ever shown him. Tyrion bowed low, tasting dust and incense, offering his service, a broken thing, yes, but sharp. She accepted with wary grace, appointing him to her small council. He watched her the way a maester might watch a kettle of wildfire, fascinated, cautious, aware that one wrong breath could ignite the world. Daenerys weighed mercy against justice in scales he could not read. Some days she freed hundreds, some nights she fed a noble lord to her dragons for sport. Yet she bled for strangers, wept over children he would have ignored, and spoke of breaking wheels that had ground the poor beneath them for centuries. Tyrion found himself almost believing her. Almost. When dawn crept across his ceiling like milk spilled over stone, he remembered Cersei, remembered a father's corpse on a privy seat, crossbow bolts quivering, remembered the taste of vengeance on his tongue and the price. He could not return to the old game as a mere piece. He had to be player and board both. If he toppled the Dragon Queen, perhaps Cersei would pardon his past. Perhaps she would not. But he would carve his name into the fate of empires. And that, he told himself, was enough. The plan unfurled by increments. First, he approached Hisdar zo Lorak, freed noble, erstwhile suitor to the queen, now prisoner in a chamber that stank of stale rosewater. Tyrion slipped past guards with a purse of gold and a tale of shared enemies. Hisdar listened, despair glazing his eyes like ice over wine. When Tyrion promised him not only release but a restored Meereen ruled by her rightful sons, the Meereenese lord knelt, tears streaking his powdered cheeks, and kissed the dwarf's twisted hand. Second, he visited the catacombs beneath the Great Pyramid. Rhaegal and Viserion snarled behind their fetters, eyes glowing furnace-hot in the gloom. Tyrion spoke to them softly, voice trembling though he cursed it. He poured a sleek trail of lamp oil along the stone, careful to leave a hidden reservoir behind a broken pillar. He pulled a stopper from a thin green vial and let a single drop kiss the pool, a drop bright as malice, wildfire fetched from the bowels of King's Landing. Dragons loved fire, they would love wildfire more, and when the moment came, that love would gorge itself on Meereen's beating heart. Third, he sent word to the sons of the Harpy. Not through parchment, those masks of gold and blood trusted only blades. He met their emissary in a choked alley by the river Skahazaden, the air thick with river rot and night-blooming lotus. The emissary's mask reflected torchlight like molten brass. Tyrion laid out his scheme, a coordinated uprising at the next full moon when Daenerys would open the fighting pits to celebrate what she called the rebirth of Meereen. In the chaos, the dragons would be loosed, the queen isolated, her blood spilled upon the sand that had once drunk slave tears. For this, Tyrion promised gold, real and imagined, and the withdrawal of Westerosi pressure once Cersei's fleets arrived to keep order. The masked killer spoke but one word, voice muffled as if uttered from within a tomb, agreed. Finally, Tyrion visited Daenerys on the eve of the games. She dined in a garden perched atop the pyramid, warm wind teasing silk banners overhead. He told jokes of Lannisport courtesans and Casterly rock vintages, drawing reluctant laughter from her lips. They shared sweet wine cooled with shards of gnawed ice stone carried from the ruins of Astapor. She spoke of children born without chains, of roads that would knit the shattered free cities to her cause. He listened, smiling, and in the lamplight saw the girl she might have been had the world not broken her. A pang, sharp as a splinter, pierced him. He drowned it in wine and stories. And when she retired, he lingered by the balustrade, staring across the black waters of the bay where Yunkai's lantern fleets bobbed like sullen fireflies, patient, waiting for the first flare of war. The fighting pits of Daznak roared like a colossal drum beneath the pitiless sun. 10,000 throats spat dust and bloodlust into the air. Tyrion sat 2 seats from the queen, sipping watered wine under a crimson awning. To her other side perched Barristan Selmy, white cloak gleaming, face etched with distrust each time Tyrion leaned forward to whisper commentary. A running jest about a Pentoshi spear dancer's footwork, a wistful sigh at the slaughter of a then champion who had once bought him ale. But Tyrion's eyes flicked always to the shadowed arcades where hooded figures gathered, hands clenched beneath robes sewn with gold thread, the harpies, wings folded but ready to unfurl. Trumpets blared. Outstrode a brawny sellsword in striped Giscari silks, Strong Bell was restored from poisoning, and behind him, snarling, a trio of chained mastiffs hungry for meat. Cheers erupted. Tyrion's heart thudded, not for the spectacle, but for the hidden fire he had prepared. In the bowels of the pyramid, a single torch now guttered lower, lower, toward the slick trail of lamp oil. At the first cry of uprising, the torch would fall. Wildfire would kiss oil. Dragons would roar. And Meereen would become a furnace no queen could survive. He counted his breaths. 1, 2, 3. A scream sharp as a severed note rent the air. A harpy leapt from the arcade, dagger sinking into an unsullied's throat. Blood spouted like a red flag. 10,000 voices shattered into panic. Spears clashed. Tyrion rose, feigning shock, but his pulse hammered with feral triumph. This was the moment the game turned. Then the world convulsed. Below, the ground bucked as though the arena itself drew breath. Stone cracked. Flames erupted. Not from his hidden oil, but from so many places at once, the sand looked to blossom with burning flowers. Wildfire, yes, but far more than the single reservoir he had planned. Green tongues licked skyward, consuming air with a hungry whump that rattled his ribs. Tyrion reeled. Someone had multiplied his design. Panic slid slick down his spine. Regal burst through an iron grate in a hurricane of shattered chain. Wings thrashing, jaws unhinged in a shriek that made marrow quiver. Viserion followed, scales reflecting Wildfire's sickly glow. They were beauty. They were doom. Their broad shadows devoured sunlight as they spiraled above the pit. People ran, ant-small, crisping beneath draconic breath that burned twice. Once green, once orange, as wildfire fumes ignited. Tyrion saw Daenerys rise, silver hair snapping in the hot gusts. Her eyes were not dawn now, but the molten heart of a smith's forge. She took a step toward the chaos, lips shaping her dragon's names, voice ragged with terror and command. Barristan's hand shot out, gripping her arm. She tore free. It happened too quickly. A harpy lunged across the dais, blade aimed at her throat. Tyrion moved without thought, leaping, arms outstretched. Steel kissed his forearm, ripped flesh. He crumpled atop the assassin, wresting the dagger free. Blood hers? His? Splattered the dais. He had saved her. The realization struck him like a mace. His plan burned down around him, and he had saved her. Why? Habit? Reflex? Love? The word tasted absurd yet undeniable. In every council meeting, every night he spent charting her ruin, he had watched her and grown, fond, perhaps. Was fondness enough to damn him? Another explosion answered. The great pyramid shuddered. Somewhere inside, stone gave way. If Daenerys died now, his allegiance to Cersei would be sealed in dragon fire and ash. If she lived, she might yet forgive, might even need him more than ever. Calculations flashed behind his eyes faster than wildfire sparks. Choose, dwarf, lion or dragon, sister or queen. Daenerys staggered as smoke billowed across the dais. Tyrion grabbed her wrist, small, hot, trembling, and pulled her toward a side stair where the air looked marginally clearer. Barristan shouted something lost in the roar. Together they descended into a warren of passages thrumming with the dragon twins' fury overhead. The stair shook, chips of marble raining like white tears. Tyrion's wounded arm slicked his sleeve. Why help me? Daenerys gasped between coughs. Her eyes shone through soot. Because betrayal, your grace, he rasped, is a song with too many verses. Some of them sour. She stared, confusion flickering. No time. He dragged her onward. In the gloom he heard screams, felt heat like the breath of a kiln. Somewhere above, Regal roared, anguish or triumph he could not tell. At a junction he hesitated. Left led towards sunlight slicing through a collapsed archway, beyond lay the plaza where more harpies surely waited. Right plunged deeper into the pyramid's bowels, dark, cramped, labyrinthine. Where did survival lie? And where did redemption? Footsteps hammered from the left. Unsullied? Harpies? The rattle of armor suggested Yunkish Sells words. Tyrion cursed. He pulled Daenerys right into shadow. They stumbled through dust and smoke until the corridor widened into a vault lined with silent marble faces, the crypt of Meereen's kings. Sarcophagi loomed, lids carved with lions, dragons, and swans, their stone eyes blind to the living. Here, at least momentarily, the world was hushed. Tyrion leaned against a sarcophagus, blood dripping from his fingers onto centuries-old carvings. He met Daenerys' gaze, saw fury, fear, and an ember of trust he did not deserve. "Tell me why," she whispered. "The truth." He opened his mouth. Lies queued behind his teeth, 7 sharp, shining little daggers. He swallowed them all. "Because I thought you would break the world," he said, voice raw as skin knees. "Because my sister wants you dead and I wanted to matter. I fed these flames. They have burned beyond my measure." Daenerys closed her eyes. Ash clung to her lashes like gray snow. "Then help me quench them." A shudder ran through stone. Dust sifted from the vault ceiling. Tyrion cursed softly. "First we must live." He pushed a cracked door at the rear of the vault. Cool air wafted, an escape tunnel? He glanced at Daenerys. She nodded. Together they slipped into blackness, pursued by silence more terrifying than roar or scream. Outside, Meereen writhed. Wildfire gouts still blossomed, but the dragon's fury seemed to ebb as if the beasts mourned the city they unintentionally consumed. Rhaegal wheeled toward the inland hills, trailing smoke like a comet's tail. Viserion perched atop a toppled obelisk, keening low and lost. Barristan Selmy emerged from rubble to find Tyrion and Daenerys coughing blood-flecked dust. A dozen unsullied formed a broken crescent around them. The White Knight's eyes widened to see the dwarf alive, supporting the queen. He started to speak, then froze, eyes shifting to the wound on Tyrion's arm, the soot-blackened dagger still clutched in his hand. Tyrion followed his gaze. He tossed the blade aside. It clanged, small and pitiful. "Later," he said. "Accusations need air, and we have none to spare." Daenerys stepped forward. Her silks hung in tatters, skin streaked with ash, but her spine was iron. "Gather the freedmen," she commanded. "Douse the fires, tend the wounded. The harpies who flee into the tunnels, smoke them out. This city is not theirs to break." Barristan bowed. The Unsullied moved. Tyrion exhaled, shoulders sagging, a dwarf unstrung. Across the plaza, a surviving harpy dragged himself, mask askew. He stared at Tyrion with hate so bright it felt almost blessing. "You did this," the gaze seemed to say. "You and none other." Tyrion raised a trembling hand, half apology, half salute. The harpy spat blood, then toppled, a puppet whose strings had burned. And in that moment Tyrion understood the shape of the war he had birthed. No clean edges, no simple loyalty. Only fire begetting fire until all thrones melted into slag. Could he still twist this chaos into something like redemption? Perhaps. But the cost would be monstrously high and measured in more than coin or crowns. Daenerys touched his uninjured arm. "Walk with me," she said. Around them, Meereen groaned, broken but breathing. He walked. Each step felt like treading the rim of a pyre he had stacked with his own hands. Somewhere distant, ships bearing the golden lion prow of House Lannister sliced across the summer sea toward Slavers Bay, hulls laden with soldiers and secrets, their arrival hastened by letters written in a dwarf's cramped script. The game was far from over, the board merely shifted. Tyrion wondered if he still knew the rules, or if the only rule left was burn or be burned. Behind him, the sunrise clawed through smoke, red as a Lannister debt unpaid. The sun crept higher over Meereen, a pale disk wreathed in smoke and the gray steam that hissed from smoldering slag heaps. Tyrion had never heard a city groan before, but Meereen groaned now. Stone grinding against stone as cracked facades settled, broken beams sighing, winds coursing through ruptured masonry to make an eerie flute of every alleyway. From the vaulted crypt where they had emerged, the dwarf and the dragon queen moved like survivors picking their way across the ribs of a half-dead leviathan. Their shadows lay long and forked, distorted by drifting flames that still licked the base of the Great Pyramid. Bodies littered the plaza, some blackened to brittle husks, others merely blood-slick and pale, their final expressions fixed between terror and awe. Freedmen knelt by the slain, keening in guttural low Valyrian, while Unsullied shuffled the corpses into neat rows, helmets glinting dully through the haze. A passing breeze carried the stench of cooked flesh and the acrid tang of wildfire. Tyrion gagged against it, Daenerys kept walking, eyes fixed on the horizon where Rhaegal circled like a wounded constellational beast, a mottled patchwork of greens and golds set ablaze by the ascending light. They crossed a bridge of scorched tiles that once led to the Fighting Pit's gate. The gate itself was gone, reduced to twisted iron mixed with half-melted masks. Tyrion glanced down. The slag had cooled into grotesque shapes, molten gold and iron fossilized together. A face stared up from the mass, mouth open in a voiceless scream, the captive heat of solidified fire forever caught behind sightless eye holes. He had a momentary illusion that the face belonged to himself, and he shuddered, tugging the collar of his grimy jerkin as if to assure himself that he still breathed. Barristan Selmy appeared out of the gloom with a squad of Unsullied. His legendary white cloak was seared at the hem, the silk fused into brittle threads. Even so, the old knight's poise did not waver. He saluted the queen, sword still slick with someone's blood. "Your Grace," he said, dust roughening his voice, "the eastern quarter is secure for now. Grey Worm holds the southern streets. But Yunkai's envoys landed in the harbor an hour past, flying flags of parley, they claim. They are posted beside their trebuchets like preachers flanked by devils, waiting for an answer." Daenerys brushed an ash-flecked strand of silver hair from her cheek. "They bring war behind their words," she said, her tone spare, controlled, as though she guided a blade along a whetstone. "We answer with strength, not supplication. But first we tend the wounded." She gave orders crisp as arrow shafts. Barristan bowed and departed. Tyrion, lagging a half-step behind, caught the old knight's brief glance, a mingled brew of suspicion and reluctant gratitude. The dwarf pretended not to notice. His wounded arm throbbed, he bound it tighter with a length of torn linen, clenching teeth against the flare of pain. Each heartbeat pumped a viscous heat through his veins that reminded him uncomfortably of green fire. "You bled for me," Daenerys said without breaking stride. "I bleed for anyone who shares my distaste for sudden decapitation," he replied, forcing a wry smile. But the jest fell limp between them like a flayed banner. He cleared his throat. "Still, I find no joy in the irony." "Irony? That I saved you from daggers I delivered into other hands." The admission slid out, low and brittle. She paused at a cracked fountain where a statue of a Giscari deity, half-woman, half-serpent, had been blasted in two. Water dribbled from the stump of the deity's severed tail, pooling around blackened marble scales. Daenerys faced Tyrion, the bronze rings of her belt chiming faintly. "When I asked why, you spoke of wheels and ruin. Speak now of what you would build." Her voice trembled like a plucked bowstring, part command, part plea. Tyrion felt the city's heat press close, as if the stones themselves listened. "I would build a world where a clever dwarf isn't forced to choose between monsters," he said. "Where a queen's justice matters more than her banners, and where lions and dragons devour the cruelty that feeds them. And my place? If you wish it, at the apex, certainly. But not as a lonely tyrant ruling ashes. I won't pretend I haven't served cruel masters. I killed my father, yet in many ways still serve his ghost. I would rather serve someone whose ghost she means to put to rest, not resurrect." Silence fell. In the distance, a collapsed wall gave way with a muffled boom, showering sparks skyward. Daenerys regarded him for an eternity measured in heartbeats. Then she nodded once. "Prove it," she said, and turned to stride toward the Great Pyramid. The corridors inside were a hellish warren. Smoke fouled the air. Debris turned every corner into a barricade of fallen beams, shattered urns, flaking frescoes. Tyrion coughed so hard he tasted blood. They reached what had been the audience gallery, now a cavernous ruin where white sunlight knifed through a gash in the ceiling. Littered along the marble floor were scrolls charred to ash feather edges, shards of dragonflagon glass, the rumps of half-melted thrones for petitioners. In the center knelt Missandei, shoulders hunched, cradling a blood-soaked child. Her cornsilk robe was torn, eyes rimmed ruby. Daenerys dropped to her knees beside her. The girl, perhaps 5, was limp, breath shallow. Smoke marks ringed her lips like a cruel jest of rouge. Missandei's voice cracked. She was trapped beneath a beam. I could not lift it alone." Tyrion remembered the taste of soot in King's Landing after the wildfire explosion on the Blackwater. He recognized the delicacy of lungs scalded from inside. He laid a gentle hand on Missandei's shoulder. "We need clean air," he murmured. "And a healer." Daenerys wrapped the child in the folds of her cloak, rising. As they moved, a fractured wall tile dislodged and rattled across the floor. The sound echoed like distant bells. Tyrion felt the pyramid tremble. Halfway to the terrace steps, a tremor cascaded through the structure. Masonry shrieked. A slab the size of a carriage door sheared from the ceiling. Tyrion reacted on instinct, shoving Daenerys and Missandei clear as the stone slammed down where they had just stood. Dust engulfed them. Coughing, eyes burning, Tyrion found himself sprawled across Daenerys, his injured arm aflame. He rolled off with a curse. Daenerys blinked, then helped Missandei rise, child pressed to her breast. She spared Tyrion a fleeting, searching glance. He deflected it with a half-grin that hurt his cracked lips. They reached the terrace, where a makeshift infirmary sprawled beneath tarp awnings. The heat was suffocating, yet within the stench of rot lingered the sharper scent of boiling artemisia and crushed mint. Someone had commandeered a brewer's cauldron for selves. It heartened Tyrion that hope could still brew amid despair. A red temple priestess, skinned the fine mahogany of Summer Isle's palisades, took the limp child. Her eyes flickered scarlet beneath the cowl as she listened to the chest with the slender ear horn. She murmured a prayer to Lawler, hands glowing faintly. Tyrion retreated 2 steps. He had seen enough red priests conjure both wonder and nightmare. Daenerys issued quiet commands. Tyrion watched freedmen cadres organize under Grey Worm's bent but unbroken flag. They passed buckets in human chains, doused embers, erected triage tents. The city still burned in places, but the Inferno's heart had calmed. Even Viserion keening had softened to a mournful croon drifting between the spires. If Cersei could see this, he thought she would find only confirmation of her prophecy, a realm overrun by fire and foreign tongues. Yet Tyrion saw possibility amidst the ruins, though possibility might still gut him before dawn. Footfalls approached. Hizdahr zo Lorax stepped from an archway flanked by 2 mercenaries sporting the braided beards of old Volantis. The Meereenese lord's once silken tunic clung to him in singed tatters. His powdered face carried rivulets of sweat so deep they washed away the paint, revealing raw flesh beneath. "Your Grace," Hizdahr began, voice trembling with both reverence and dread, "the Council of Great Masters petitions audience." Daenerys faced him. Councils, like phoenixes, rise from ashes, yet often they bear the same talons that birthed the fire. Why should I hear them? Hizdahr glanced at Tyrion in an unspoken plea. Tyrion folded his arms, expression unreadable. He had promised the man restoration in exchange for conspiracy. Now the wheel had spun off its axle. Yet the promise still lodged like a fishbone in his conscience. "The great masters can still guide grain into the city," Hizdahr said with a brittle dignity. "Without their storehouses, the freedmen will starve. Winter storms churn the sea lanes. Even dragons cannot eat charred stone." He was right, famine already stalked the shattered avenues. Tyrion had glimpsed freed children licking soot for traces of spilled honey. He stepped forward. "Starvation will finish what wildfire began. Let them speak, Your Grace." Daenerys weighed Tyrion's face. At length she inclined her head. "At dusk. But remember, my mercy burned today. Tell them to tread softly upon its coals." Hizdahr bowed, retreating like a man who sensed dragons at his back. Evening bled into the city, turning smoke plumes rose gold before fading to bruised purple. Torches flared along the road to the Great Pyramid. Tyrion limped beside Jorah Mormont. Newly returned from exile on a Yunkish galley, he had commandeered when the city erupted. The Bear Knight's thick arms still bore lesions from a plague scare. He hid them beneath rough-spun sleeves, but Tyrion's sharp eye missed little. "My return is ill-timed," Jorah muttered. "For treason, love, or leprosy?" Tyrion asked. "Take your pick." Jorah's jaw clenched. "Yet I'll swing a sword where the queen orders, that she may yet demand." Tyrion's gaze flicked to the harbor. More sails crested the horizon, sunset painting their canvas crimson. He recognized the lion sigils even from here, though Meereenese dusk disguised them in rust. And sooner than you think, in the War Council chamber, one of the pyramid's few intact halls, Daenerys convened her advisors. Barristan, Grey Worm, Missandei, Jorah, Daario Naharis, his cheek split, swagger dulled by fatigue, and, unexpectedly, Kinvara, a high priestess of the Red Temple newly arrived from Volantis, robes shimmering ember-bright in the torchlight. Tyrion took his seat at Daenerys' left. His pulse drummed behind his ears. Grey Worm reported sabotage arrests, 3 harpy cells crushed in the Warrens, 5 in the Artisans' Quarter, yet skirmishes persisted. Barristan relayed Yunkai's parley, an offer of truce if Daenerys ceded the city, freed her dragons under neutral seal, and paid indemnity equal to Meereen's entire annual grain yield. Daario spat at the notion. Daenerys turned to Tyrion. "Advise me." He rose, steadied himself on the table's edge. "Yunkai's parchment reeks of bluff. They have walled slaves but lack stomach for prolonged siege. Winter storms will scuttle their fleet before paymasters can replenish them. Refuse their terms. Demand unconditional withdrawal, then strike where they are weak." Jorah leaned forward. "Where's that?" "Their fear of dragons magnify it. Rhaegal and Viserion are wounded but alive. We stage a nocturnal sortie, dragons overhead, unsullied by stealth along the quay, Grey Worm's finest. Burn 3 siege ships. Leave 1 half-sunk as a warning. Dario's grin returned. A rousing plan, assuming we still have dragons to ride. Tyrion's stare flicked to Kinvara. And priests who claim flame reveals truth. Light their braziers atop the nearest mast. Let the Yunkish see prophecy and conflagration. Kinvara smiled, serene. All fires speak the same tongue. We merely lend an ear. Daenerys drummed fingers on the table. Tyrion felt the eyes of the room needle into him, suspicion and hope interwoven. He cleared his throat. The great master's storehouses must also open. Offer them seats on a provisional council in return for grain. Hostages, if you must, but feed the city, and freedmen will bleed for you. Hisdar, summoned with the great masters, stepped forward from the shadows. We accept, he said, voice placating. But will her grace guarantee restitution for damages inflicted on noble holdings? Your holdings fueled the fires that gutted my city, Daenerys answered, eyes like chipped ice. Restitution will be measured in loyalty, not coin. Serve me now, and your houses may stand among those that inherit this new Meereen. Hisdar bowed deeper, but Tyrion detected resentment simmering like a kettle left too long. He would have to watch the man. The council dispersed to enact preparations. Tyrion lingered, rolling a dull bronze coin across his knuckles, the same token he had used to bribe the dockmaster days ago, now blackened by soot. Daenerys approached. You speak as though my counsel were your own, she said softly. Words are wind, he said. But even wind turns millstones. Her gaze searched him. Wind can also stoke wildfire, which is why we must choose its direction. He pocketed the coin. You asked proof. Allow me to negotiate tomorrow's parley personally. The Yunkai think me a disgraced lion, easy to tame. I will show them otherwise. And if they pierce your heart with a crossbow for your trouble? A Lannister always pays his debts. I still owe myself a good death. He smiled, though it hurt his cracked lips. But I intend to live long enough to regret living. She almost laughed, almost. Instead she said, very well. At dawn you parley. Fail me and I'll feed your corpse to the dragons. Succeed and I will name my reward later, he finished. Careful. Dragons covet. Lannisters too. For a heartbeat they were two conspirators sharing jest amid rubble. Then she was gone, robes whispering. Tyrion exhaled and pressed a palm to his bandaged arm, blood seeped through in a slow bloom. Night fell like a fresh shroud. Meereen's skyline glittered with ember constellations where watchfires ringed the walls. Tyrion stood atop a lesser terrace overlooking the harbor. He spotted the black silhouettes of siege ships moored in a crescent, trebuchets jutting like scorpion tails. Between them glided the stranger vessels trimmed in gold. Lannister pennants drooped in the calm air, lions half-hidden, yet the dwarf knew every flourish of that proud device. The fleet was smaller than expected, perhaps a scouting wing, but any lion in the bay meant Cersei's claws. He felt a tug in his chest, equal parts nostalgia and dread. Footsteps scuffed stone. Barristan approached, moonlight casting his scarred cheeks into relief. I know what you did, the old knight said. Which deed, sire? I commit several an hour. You armed the harpies with wildfire. Tyrion kept his gaze on the sea. If you had proof you would already have me in irons. I have the testimony of 2 captured harpies who describe a dwarf with mismatched eyes. One swore you handed him crystal vials. Did he mention my charming wit? This is not jest. Barristan's voice cracked like old leather. Why confess partial guilt before the queen, yet conceal your true part? Why save her life? Tyrion weighed the night air, cool despite the fires. My father taught me that the surest armor is doubt. If no one is certain where my loyalties lie, they cannot easily strike the heart. He turned. I saved Daenerys because my plan outgrew its cage and would have swallowed us all, myself included. Call it self-preservation. The queen trusts you still. She is wiser than both of us, but hope can blind wisdom. Should I tell her? If you wish her wrath to eclipse today's flames, yes. Tyrion's smile was sad. But weigh the ashes against the living. You might find even honor flinches. Barristan's hand tightened on his sword hilt. At last he said, I will not lie to my queen. Then tell her everything after the siege is lifted. I will stand trial or burn, whichever she deems fitting. Tyrion touched the knight's armored sleeve. But let the city survive first. Barristan studied him, moonlight silvering his cataract-soft eyes. Finally he nodded once, curt. He left without another word. Tyrion sagged against the parapet. The coin in his pocket felt heavier, as though minted from lead. He drew it out. The once bright lion was scarred, yet still discernible. He flicked it into the dark water below and watched until ripples swallowed every trace. Dawn crawled across a sepulchre sky, colorless save where bleeds of coral limned the cloud bottoms. Tyrion boarded a narrow galley flagged with the broken chains sigil of Meereen. The crew rowed with silent urgency, cutting a placid channel through harbor scum to the Yunkish flagship. A lull preceded storms. He felt storm's tongue upon the wind. Yunkai's envoy awaited him on the deck, a thin man in saffron robes, eyes swallowing every detail. His name was Grasden Mo Ulher, a cousin to those who once ruled pyramids of gold. He smiled without warmth. Lion of Lannister, Grasden said, welcome. We had expected the Dragon Queen herself. You have me, a lesser monster, but chattier. Tyrion sketched a bow. Shall we dispense with platitudes? Grasden gestured to a lacquered table weighted by scrolls. Terms unchanged, he said. Cede Meereen, surrender dragons. In return, we allow your queen to depart unharmed with her army. Tyrion poured himself watered wine, ignoring flies circling the cup. Dragons do not surrender, he said. They devour. The city still stands, despite your sabotage. Grasden's brow furrowed. Sabotage? Tyrion tilted his head. Oh, come now. The wildfire cache is too many to be placed by harpies alone. He sipped. Only Yunkai could ship such quantity past our patrols. Grasden blinked. Tyrion saw confusion turn to alarm. Yunkai had indeed supplied nothing of the sort. The dwarf pressed. In truth, he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially, your masters fear dragons because they misunderstand them. Dragons burn cities, yes, but they can protect them too. Suppose Yunkai withdraws its siege engines today and promises navigation rights along the Skahazaden in perpetuity. In exchange, Meereen pledges dragons to patrol the Gulf, deterring Volantene pirates who ravage Yunkish trade. Grasden scoffed, but Tyrion saw the flicker of intrigue. Trade was Yunkai's lifeblood. He leaned in. Offer ends at sunset, he murmured. After that, we raise your trebuchets on pikes. A shout from the forecastle cut short argument. Both men turned. Over the horizon crested fresh sails, not Yunkish orange, but lion red trimmed in gold. Lannister wore galleys, their oars shred-reaping the morning calm. Banners snapped, ironclad prows sent gulls shrieking. Tyrion's stomach plunged. Cersei's twins of iron had arrived. Grasden's smile returned, triumphant. Reinforcements, dwarf? Your homeland remembers its son. Tyrion swallowed bile. Those lions roar for Casterly Rock, not Yunkai. They come to claim the queen's head and yours if you impede them. Grasden waved a dismissive hand, but uncertainty coiled behind his eyes. He turned, barking orders to runners. Sailors scurried like ants on a kicked nest. Drums boomed across the fleet. The siege line shifted into a new formation, one wary of both dragons and lions. Seizing the chaos, Tyrion bowed sharply. Shall I convey your counteroffer to my queen? Swift discussion may yet spare your coffers. Grasden hesitated. Pride warred with fear, fear won. Go, he spat. Return by midday. Tyrion descended to the galley, mind spinning. As the oars beat their measured rhythm homeward, the dwarf considered the chessboard anew. Yunkai rattled, Cersei's fleet at the gate, Daenerys regrouping. In his pocket lay nothing now, no coin, no certainty, only the throb of his wound and the memory of a city screaming. He inhaled salt, tasted the metallic tang of looming calamity, and exhaled through his teeth. I always did love a board with more squares, he muttered. The oars dipped, rose, dripped, each stroke a measured heartbeat. Back ashore, the bay thrummed with tension. Meereenese citizens crowded every parapet, eyes huge at the new banners. Tyrion hobbled through market rubble toward the command spire where Daenerys awaited. Soldiers parted, whispering. A girl with ash in her curls clutched a clay dragon whistle, lips trembling uncertainly. Tyrion paused, knelt despite the ache, and took the whistle. He blew a soft trill. The sound was thin but true. He pressed it back into her palm. H. Old fast, he told her. Dragons answer brave hearts. She nodded wide-eyed. He straightened, ignoring the lance of pain up his spine, and continued. Daenerys listened to his report in a candlelit chamber that reeked of tallow and sweat. At the map table, colored stones marked fleets and ground forces. She fingered one shaped like a lion. Cersei's galleys number 12, perhaps more beyond sight, Tyrion said. Copper-rammed heavy scorpions on each deck. You're accursed underbreath. Grey Worm stood silent, jaw flint. Barristan's lined visage nodded. Tyrion continued. Yunkai is unsettled by sudden allies they did not invite. We exploit the distrust. Offer Yunkai limited trade concessions only if they turn their siege engines on the Lannisters. Meanwhile, we rally freedmen galleys to flank. Dario propped boots on a stool, sharpening a curved dagger. And the dragons? Rhaegal can still take flight. Viserion may manage short bursts, Daenerys said. But scorpion bolts will fell them if we're careless. Tyrion studied the wound on his arm, bandage seeping. Then we sow confusion first. Night raids in skiffs along the Lannister hulls. Pitch pots, powder, wildfire. He paused, grim irony lancing him. Yes, wildfire barrels. Turn their strength upon them. Grey Worm inclined his head, stoic. Kinvara's eyes glowed crimson in the dim, as if the flames on the table map reflected secrets only she could read. Jorah cleared his throat. The queen must remain ashore. Daenerys shot him a look sharp as obsidian. I do not hide behind walls while others burn in my name. Tyrion interjected, voice calm. A queen's survival is our greatest weapon. Let me lead the skiff raids. I am small, but subterfuge is my home. Barristan raised white brows. We have able Marines. Yes, Tyrion said. And should any be captured, Yunkai will barter them for coin. A dwarf they might simply laugh at, until I set their powder hold alight. Daenerys considered, eyes flicking between mapstones and the wounded man before her. You barely stand. Wine will stiffen my spine. Or terror. He managed a shrug. At last she nodded. Very well. Tonight you sail with a cadre of Unsullied who owe you no loyalty but duty. She reached into a coffer, retrieved a small silver brooch in shape of a dragon coiled around a hand. She pinned it to his torn jerkin. Serve me his hand until dawn proves whether you can bear the weight. Words failed him. The brooch was cold, heavy as absolution. He bowed more deeply than ever, bowing to Cersei, Tywin, or Joffrey. Missandei readied parchment for declarations to the freedman levies. Kinvara murmured a low hymn, palms hovering above a brazier, flames leapt, painting her face in shifting copper. As the council dispersed, Jorah touched Tyrion's sleeve. You court death, the Bear Knight said. So does everyone who wakes each morning. Tyrion pressed a flask into Jorah's hand. Share this later. If we live? Jorah accepted, a ghost of a smile beneath his beard. Full darkness breathed across Slaver's Bay. Stars quivered in the smoke-hazed firmament. Skiffs slipped from hidden inlets, hulls coated in tar and grit. Tyrion crouched at the prow of one, clutching a black glass jar of wildfire granted by the same alchemists he had once coaxed to burn Stannis' fleet. The irony stung like salt in an open wound, yet necessity dulled principle. 5 Unsullied rode, silent as moonlight on marble. Behind them, a dozen other skiffs fanned out, each bearing jars, pitch-soaked ropes, steel grapnels. Grey Worm captained the central boat, Dario another. Jorah lingered near the rear, sword resting across his knees like a metal prayer. The Lannister flagship loomed, a shadowy colossus. Lanterns dotted its rigging. Tyrion tasted cedar, pitch, and faint tannin of wine barrels stacked below deck. He knew the stores of such warships intimately. He gestured, signal agreed, a slow raised fist. Oars dipped, slowed. The skiff glided into the lee of the great hull where barnacles crusted the waterline. Tyrion uncorked a wildfire jar. Green tendrils of vapor spiraled like malicious smoke serpents. With flint and steel he sparked tinder. The flame crawled, turned emerald. He took a breath scented of madness, then lobbed the jar into an open cargo grate. It shattered with a dull chime. Silence for a heartbeat, too, then the belly of the ship bloomed emerald, hissing hate. Heat punched the night. A muffled foam lifted the vessel inches from water, timbers shrieking. Sailors' cries split the dark. Unsullied hurled grapnels, scaling seams between planks. Tyrion scrambled after them, wounded arms screaming fury. On deck, chaos reigned. Lannister crewmen, some fresh from Westeros, gaped at green hell birthing below. Tyrion slipped through smoke, hurled a second jar at a scorpion engine. The contraption erupted, flinging burning shards. A bolt thudded into a mast, trailing sparks like a wounded comet. He ducked, rolling beneath a slashing sword. Rising, he jammed a dagger, pilfered from a fallen sailor, into the attacker's thigh. The man dropped, shrieking. Tyrion limped past, ice streaming. Shouts rose from adjoining ships. Lannister captains ordered water lines, Yunkish drummers pounded alarm. Arrows hissed across decks like angry hornets. From Meereen's walls answered horns, and the heavy tread of siege ballistae hoisted newly into place. Tyrion's lungs burned. He spotted the mizzen where a second scorpion waited. Another wildfire jar rested at his belt. He cast it. It burst, drenching rigging. Green tongues raced upward, devouring tarred ropes. Sailcloth ignited, a banner of liquid jade against the night. Sudden wind gusted. An immense shadow crossed the moon. Regal descended, brooming air with tattered wings. His roar was agony made sound. Flames, gold this time, tinged orange, spewed across the adjacent galley, setting siege bolts of flame in their racks. On Tyrion's deck, men screamed a single word, dragon. Panic-shattered formation. He seized the moment, calling to Unsullied, "Abandon ship." They obeyed, plunging over the side. Tyrion followed, but a lurch of burning timber snapped beneath his foot. He crashed against rail, ribs crying out. Flames licked closer. He hauled himself up, hooked arm over the rail, and flung outward. Cold sea swallowed him. Salt burned his wound like molten iron. He surfaced, coughing brine. Around him, wreckage bobbed, timbers, blazing shards, bodies. The night sky warred with green and gold fire. Grey worms skiff-knifed past. Hands grabbed Tyrion, hoisted him aboard. He collapsed, chest heaving. The harbor now resembled a cauldron. One Lannister galley tore free of its moorings, prow aflame like a lion's mane. Another listed, half-sunken, keel crippled. Yunkai's ships pivoted uncertainly, loosing bolts at dragons, at lions, sometimes at one another. Regal wheeled overhead, trailing smoke from a wing wound but roaring defiance. Viserion, smaller, streaked in brief arcs, belching gouts that set sail tops billowing torch-bright. Tyrion clutched the gunwale and laughed through ragged sobs. The laugh turned to a cough, then to something unnameable, a howl of pain, remorse, exhilaration twined. He had broken the siege, perhaps, but at what cost? The harbor burned, men died by hundreds, and Cersei's vengeance had found him nonetheless. The skiff turned toward Meereen's quay. On the seawall stood Daenerys, silhouette against firelight, hair whipping, cloak emblazoned by reflected conflagration. When the skiff grounded on the shingle, she strode forward, unsmiling. Tyrion tried to kneel, his leg buckled. Grey Worm steadied him. He met Daenerys' gaze, ready for wrath, yet her eyes held only fierce assessment. "How many ships?" she asked. "3 lions crippled, 1 burning," he rasped. Yunkai's courage aflame as well. Her shoulders eased a fraction. She touched the dragon brooch at his chest. "Then the hand of the queen has bled for his new realm." He wanted to quip, something about promotions and future pensions, but exhaustion blanked his wit. He managed a nod. Nearby, Yora staggered from another skiff, Dario after him, both singed but grinning. Barristan emerged, directing stretcher-bearers for wounded Unsullied. The air thrummed with din and smoke, but within that maelstrom pulsed a living hope, raw, imperfect, but alive. Across the bay, remaining Lannister ships cut anchor, sails snapping as they tacked seaward, afraid to face dragons at sunrise. Tyrion watched them retreat, a knot tightening behind his breastbone. Somewhere beyond that horizon, Cersei would read a raven scroll of failure and spit venom. Venom that would cross seas in steel and gold yet to come. But tonight he had chosen. Lion still, yet bound to dragon. The dice were cast. Daenerys placed a hand on his uninjured shoulder. "Rest," she said. "Tomorrow we rebuild, and finish breaking every chain." Tyrion allowed himself a weary smile, unsure if it was hope or doom that warmed his chest. Smoke curled into dawn, and the first light limned Meereen's shattered spires in a color almost like forgiveness. Raven-wing clouds herded the last shreds of smoke toward the horizon while a brackish dawn seeped over Slaver's Bay, revealing a shoreline scarred by the night's fury. Meereen looked less a city than the half-extinguished coal of some Titan's forge, 1,000 ember eyes still blinking in its labyrinth of broken streets. Everywhere, sounds rose in thin, exhausted wisps. Masonry shifting where walls bowed. The scrape of shovels as freedmen dug for neighbors. The weary clink of water pails passed hand to shaking hand. Yet for all the ruin, a stubborn pulse beat beneath the rubble. A people refusing to die, and a queen who meant to prove that ruin could be the womb of something fiercer than its own destruction. Tyrion Lannister had slept not at all. He spent the hours between Dragonfire and dawn in a tower chamber that stank of burnt parchment and stale sweat, poring over casualty ledgers with Missandei while scribes chattered around them like startled sparrows. Now, numb-eyed, he watched the sun lift a sickle of orange over the harbor, each glimmer on the water reminding him of the wildfire's green hell. He flexed his bandaged arm and felt the skin pull, throb. An unkind voice in his head whispered, "Lannister coin paid for that hell." Lannister hands placed it. "Your hands guided them." He drowned the voice by refilling his goblet with goat milk watered with red wine, though it tasted of ash. Half the council dozed beneath blankets draped over benches. Grey Worm sat statue still at the map table, eyelids half-shuttered but sensing every motion. Dario snored softly in a corner, silver stubble glittering in the lantern light. Kinvara, though she had prayed through the night beside the wounded, knelt before a brazier, lips still framing silent verse. The fire kissed her face crimson as if her god would not relinquish her to mortal fatigue. Yora entered first when the door swung inward, limping from a fresh sword graze, his grim smile determined to disguise pain. Behind him strode Barrist and Selmy, cloak scorched anew. He had spent the darkest hours leading bucket lines where embers rekindled. And last came Daenerys Targaryen. She wore a simple jerkin of scorched leather over a white tunic now gray with soot. No jewels, no crown, only the weight of a city on slender shoulders. Her hair, hastily braided, framed pupils that looked like chips of obsidian set in frost. A hush fell as she crossed to the window embrasure and surveyed the harbor. From that vantage, 4 Lannister war galleys smoldered, 2 capsized upon dawn's low tide, their rams jutting skyward like drowned beast spines. The remainder retreated before first light, striped wake scars fading into open sea. Yunkai's siege line lay in tatters, but still afloat, anchored far enough to feign neutrality. Daenerys spoke without turning. Reports. Grey Worm rose. 70 unsullied dead, 138 wounded. Freedmen casualties, 420 at last count. Dragons alive. Regal tired, wing-torn but healing. Barracks 7 collapsed. Grain reserves intact, but 3 wells fouled by ash. Missandei added figures in soft Valyrian. Tyrion winced. Numbers were stones, when piled high they crushed. So, Daenerys said, voice flat, we endured the night. Today we decide whether it bought us breathing room or only delayed the strangling. Now she turned, gaze sweeping each face. Yunkai will lick its burns. Then row hard to blame the lions for every lost coin. Cersei will send more warships. The bay will choke on banners before moon's turn unless we force one side to kneel or the other to sink. I would have counsel. Dario roused, rubbing eyes. We struck a crippling blow. Strike again before they mend. Sail at sunset, dragons overhead. Finish the lions while they limp. Let Yunkai watch and learn fear. Barristan shook his silvered head. Victories of desperation breed overreach. Our hulls are hides stretched over skeletons, patchwork at best. Push at sea again so soon, we trade last night's triumph for our own funeral pyres. The Lion fleet will double in a fortnight, Yora said. Cersei has ships rotting in every Westerosi harbor. She'll hire Myrish triremes, Pentoshi cogs, by all the Cell captains who once served Stannis. Outrunning the tide is folly. Better to build a wall. He rested a gauntlet on the table. Fortify the harbor mouth with fireships, chain booms, scorpions on rafts. Dare them to pay blood for every fathom advanced. Harbor chains did little for King's Landing during the Blackwater, Tyrion reminded him, running a thumb over the dragon brooch at his chest. But wildfire did. Unfortunately, our supply is spent, and for that the city may thank me, though it does not know. He poured again, ignoring the sidelong glance from Grey Worm. Chains may hold if coupled with geography. We control one headland, the Eastern Cape, but the Western Cape remains in rebel hands. Recapture it, mount scorpions on the cliffs, deny the bay to enemy sails. There are 2,000 more freedmen than harpies in that quarter, Dario protested. The harpies hide behind their old slave guards, yes, but once the freedmen see unsullied standards, they'll revolt. Tyrion arched an eyebrow. If revolts could be summoned by banners alone, the world would know only kings and corpses. The freedmen there starve. Their children choke on ash. Use them as shield bearers and they may embrace the harpies out of spite. Feed them first, promise amnesty, then they might lift pitchforks in our favor. Yora nodded. The grain I seized from Yunkai's stores en route, the sacks sit and hold. We can offload by noontide. And how do we move unsullied across the city without inviting ambush? Barristan asked. Grey Worm tapped a rune-marked stone on the map. Tunnel beneath the Artisan Ward leads to West Cape. Old slave sewer. Harpies know not. We march 2 cohorts at dusk. Tyrion twisted his lips. We'll need torches, fresh air shafts, or your cohorts emerge as corpses. Still, he added, it may suffice. Daenerys listened, weighing every word. Then she spoke a quiet phrase in High Valyrian. Missandei translated for those who understood only fragments. Feed the hungry first. Grain wagons roll by midday under unsullied guard. Today this city sees my promise made flesh, not ash. Tyrion inclined his head. Good, he thought. And the Western Cape assault? Grey Worm will command, she said. Dario flanks from sea's edge with the storm crows. Barristan secures the eastern ramparts. Yora, the Bear Knight stiffened. Your Grace, you sail north with a swift sloop. She reached into her pocket, produced a small scroll whose wax bore her dragon sigil. This letter for the captains of Pento's spice fleet. They once served my brother's cause before Robert's war. They owe House Targaryen a debt. Remind them debts paid now are cheaper than those exacted later by dragons. She held the scroll toward him. Bring me their ships or their refusal stamped in blood. Yora accepted, jaw set. Tyrion recognized a silent protest, sending him from her side again. But Yora only bowed. Daenerys turned last to Tyrion. You remain hand. The words pressed weight upon him heavier than Greystone. You will oversee grain distribution and ensure no mouth, free or noble, goes unfed without proof of treachery. Those who hoard you expose. Those who sabotage you judge. Ah, Tyrion mused, so I become both baker and headsman. Aloud he said, I will see that bread and justice rise together. Bread rises slowly, she replied. Justice sometimes must bolt like lightning. This city has tasted one kind of fire, let it taste another. She dismissed them with a nod. Tyrion's first task was mundane yet vital, turning stolen grain into meals. Atop a broad terrace repurposed as ration depot, he directed teams of freedmen and scribes. Missandei maintained ledgers while Grim Griff, an old Astapori baker with flour dusting his iron beard, oversaw ovens hastily rebuilt from cracked kilns. Grey Worm dispatched runners to summon every child under 10 first. At Tyrion's insistence, each received a flatbread sweetened with the last of the city's honey stores. Some children cried at the taste. Others devoured in stunned silence. Between batches, Tyrion leaned on a broken balustrade to rest his throbbing arm. He watched smoke drift and considered his next letters. He needed to write Varys, if the spider lived, warning of Cersei's escalation. He needed to draft edicts outlawing private militias within the walls, to requisition smiths for more scorpion bolts, to arrange for Regal's wounded wing membrane to be stitched with cured hide. A hiss of robes drew his eye. Kinvara approached, her shadow spilling long. She studied him with that unsettling certainty red priests wielded, as if watching the slow blossoming of a prophecy's bud. Flames favor you again, dwarf. Flames rarely ask whom they favor, Tyrion replied, dabbing sweat from his brow. They burn what they kiss. Yet you walk unscorched where others blister and blacken. He snorted. Look closer. All my life has been a scorch mark, just pale enough to be overlooked. Kinvara tilted her head, small smile forming. The night is dark and full of terrors, but there is more than one dawn in a lifetime. The Lord of Light showed me a flicker, a lion bathed first in green, then gold, then crimson, and at last white fire. The white burned hottest, and from it rose a new forge. You are not done melting. The words unnerved him, though he masked it. Prophecies tend to speak in riddles because plain speech spoils the suspense. He bowed. Do keep me informed when the forge grows too hot, so I might at least fetch a wineskin. She departed without replying. Tyrion watched her figure merge with freedmen lining for rations, the red of her robes bleeding among drab tunics like fire threads in coarse cloth. He shivered despite the heat. By midday, 3 caravans of grain had rolled. Tyrion commandeered color dyes from cloth markets to mark each bag with the sigil of a broken chain above a dwarf's lion helm, a harmless vanity but useful. If any bag reappeared in a harpy storeroom, guilt would be unmistakable. News reached him near dusk. Grey Worm's cohorts emerged from the sewer tunnel upon the western cape, surprising harpy defenders mid-change of watch. Fighting was fierce but brief. Storm crows landed from sea, spear throwers scaling the cliffs. Within an hour, the rebel banner, gold mask on red, lay trampled. Dario sent a finger from the harpy captain in a linen pouch, along with a note, regift if desired. Tyrion burned both. The victory allowed Scorpion teams to haul timber and torsion cables up switchback goat paths through the night. By first light, 3 engines would command the harbor mouth, a rude awakening for any returning Lion fleet. Yet the night did not let Tyrion rest. Past midnight, Barristan came to the ration terrace, face drawn. A messenger, he said, voice grave. They retired to a side room cluttered with barley sacks. Barristan produced a damp oilskin packet, found stabbed to death inside the shrouded market. This under his tunic. He handed over a folded parchment. Tyrion peeled it open. A sigil stared back, a lion rampant inked in blood rather than wax. Beneath it, in a script Tyrion recognized as Qyburn's neat hand, 3 lines. Hold the harbor. Bleed the dragon. Buy time. And below, a smaller note, the spider sails for you. Tyrion's pulse rattled. So Varys had chosen sides after all, or Qyburn believed so. Barristan watched him. Your sister reaches long. The knight's words were neither accusation nor absolution. She has a talent for claws, Tyrion said quietly. He folded the note, slipped it into his jerkin. Does the queen know? I told her the courier sought you specifically. I withheld the contents until you decided. Tyrion's gratitude showed in a slow nod. Then I decide to warn Daenerys myself. He exhaled. But on my timing. Barristan's jaw tightened. Every hour we withhold, buys us a chance to set the board. Tyrion met his gaze. Cersei commands not merely ships but secrets. If I show Daenerys now, rage may blind her. Better I craft a trap for the spider if indeed he comes. And for the queen to spring it once we know its teeth. Selmy weighed him in silence. Finally, one day the truth will demand more than half measures. That day looms, sire. And I intend to meet it walking, not dragged. The knight left. Tyrion sagged onto a grain sack, the ache in his arm renewed by tension. He pulled the note again, studying the smear of blood ink. Bleed the dragon. The phrase could mean armies, sabotage, or assassin blades. Any could get their cause. His thoughts spiraled until Dawn's hush caught him half-slumped, quill in hand over a page addressed to no one. What price redemption when betrayal stalks both roads? He never inked a second line. A day and a night passed in ceaseless toil, towering scorpions erected, wells purged, sewage canals reopened. Whispers drifted that Daenerys herself visited the infirmaries where moans lifted like a bleak choir. She washed soiled bandages, held burnt hands until tremors eased, fed broth to children who still flinched at dragon roars overhead. Such whispers spread faster than fear, and Tyrion welcomed them. A queen seen is a queen believed, he told Missandei while approving cloth for new banners, white field, red dragon, broken chains. Scribes dubbed it the Dawn Standard, but dusk of the second day bore ill omen. From the refurbished western watchtower, a horn blared 3 long notes, enemy sails. Tyrion shuffled onto the parapet, spyglass to eye. Distant on the tide rolled a phalanx of black ships trimmed in red, Lannister galleys, 14 strong, eclipsing the burnt hulls they had lost. Worse, interspersed among them sailed squat coghulks under neutral brown. Grain carriers? No. Through polished lens, Tyrion recognized lattice scaffolds straddling their decks, siege towers. Floating scorpions, he realized. They meant to anchor offshore and rain iron at leisure. Flags rose on the lead lion vessel, a white pennant signaling parley. Cersei's envoy had arrived. Tyrion convened council in the high audience hall, ceilings patched, yet echoes still sang of the day it cracked. Daenerys listened as he described the fleet. 12 days since the Raven left King's Landing, he calculated aloud. Cersei wasted no hour. But these siege hulks, they weren't built in Westeros. Hired from Pentos, perhaps? She bought contractors already afloat. Qyburn's coin moves quick. You expected this? Dario said. I expected worse. Tyrion wet his lips. And yet there's surprise, they fly parley. Cersei rarely sues with words when fire suffices. She must want something precious. Ahead, Barristan guessed. Yours. Or mine, Daenerys said. But she would ask for both and settle for either. Yora returned that morning with a single Pentoshi cutter pledged, bristled. We should answer parley to read her mind, if nothing else. Tyrion breathed. If I go, the envoy sees proof I live, which may influence their opening gambit. If Daenerys goes, they bring 100 scorpions to pierce her on the deck. Too risky. Grey Worm spoke. I go. I speak little lion tongue, but silence can defeat snares. Tyrion shook his head. They will expect politics, not stoic resolve. Let me meet them, under condition our scorpions track their masts. A single bolt fired and their envoy becomes a pincushion. He looked to the queen. Trust me one more time, your grace. I will show your enemies the dragon's hand and the lion's teeth. She studied him, a slow, naked study that felt like knives prying plates of armor. At last, you have until sunset. No longer. She turned to Grey Worm. 100 unsullied sail as escort, bows knocked but strings slack until my signal. Kinvara will attend as witness. And the Dawn Standard flies at the mast. Tyrion bowed, heartbeat drumming. The parley deck reeked of new pitch and old blood someone had hastily scrubbed yet could not banish the rust scent. The envoy awaited beneath a silk awning, a tall woman in lacquered black armor etched with red enamel lions. Helmet plume of white horsehair flowed down her back, face shaded save for pale eyes. Tyrion recognized her instantly, Lady Rhiannon Lannister of Lannisport, cousin twice removed, famed for spear tilt contests and rumored bedmate of the Kingsguard knight Loras Tyrell before his downfall. Rumors said she commanded a private sail band called the Scarlet Bow. "Little cousin," she greeted, voice smooth as polished iron. "How the winds whirl you." Tyrion forced a courtly bow. "A fair morn, my lady, if a deck painted in fire's memory counts fair. To what does Meereen owe your claws?" She produced a scroll. "Queen Regent Cersei Lannister, first of her name, offers generous terms, immediate surrender of the usurper Daenerys Targaryen and her adult male dragon. In exchange, Meereen's citizens retain property and avoid sack. 10,000 bushels of grain to be delivered courtesy of the crown. Also, full pardon to one Lord Tyrion Lannister for previous misdeeds, plus restoration of all lands and titles contingent upon his safe escort to King's Landing." Tyrion's bark of laughter startled seagulls. 10,000? Even our burnt silos held thrice that. Meager fare for betrayal. Or bounty beyond ashes, Rhiannon countered. Fire's cost grows daily. Except now, and your freedmen may live free another sunrise. Free beneath Lannister rule is still a collar, Tyrion said, stepping closer. My sister deals in promises as cobblers in nails, sharp, abundant, and soon trod underfoot. Rhiannon's eyes flicked over the unsullied lining the rail, Kinvara's crimson glare. Your sister believes blood speaks louder than braziers. She sent proof. A soldier unfurled a damp sailcloth bundle. Inside lay two heads, one black-haired with a salt and pepper beard, the other shaved, eyes sewn shut. Tyrion's marrow iced. The bearded head he knew only by rumor, Makoro, the fire priest who once guided Victarion Greyjoy. The shaved head, but that one he knew intimately, Varys, the spider, lips still curved in faint secrecy even in death. A rattle escaped Tyrion before he mastered himself. So she kills allies to win new ones. He forced rasp of humor. The spider would spin no more webs, I grant. Rhiannon shrugged. He whispered of aiding dragons. Now he whispers no more. She leaned in. Will you? Tyrion gazed at Varys's sewn eyelids. Memories stampeded, jokes over arbor red, conspiracies traded in torchlit tunnels, the soft compassion hidden beneath the eunuch's sly exterior. He dies because I fled, Tyrion thought, nausea-surging. Then something hardened inside. He straightened. My queen will never bow to threats carved in flesh, he said. But you have sailed far, accept this courtesy. Meereen offers safe harbor for voluntary retreat. Remain beyond the cape by nightfall or face Scorpion Valley. This is final. Lady Rhiannon's lips curved. Then final it shall be. She snapped gauntlet fingers. Soldiers hauled a large crate forward, iron-bound. A plank slid, within coiled a black-scaled bolt, barbed, laced with green residue Tyrion recognized too well, wildfire glass. A dragon killer. Rhiannon spoke so only he could hear. When your beast next wheels above, we fire a volley of these. Even a dragon's belly yields to alchemical steel. You have until dawn to reconsider our generosity. She stepped back. Take word to the silver slut. Tyrion smiled a brittle smile. Oh, I shall carry every syllable. And she will answer, in fire or in mercy, as suits her dignity. He turned, cloak swirling. Kinvara's eyes blazed as they boarded their skiff. Under a bleeding sunset, Tyrion delivered the tale. The hall erupted, Dario cursing, Barristan demanding immediate strike, Missandei weeping quietly at Varys's fate. Daenerys stood very still, hands clasped white. When fury subsided, Tyrion addressed them. They hold wildfire-tipped bolts. One strike could fell Regal if he flies low. Drag of flame alone may not suffice. We fight cunning with cunning. He paced. I propose we grant them their dawn, only not the dawn they expect. Tonight we slip small fire skiffs under darkness, lash barrels of lamp oil to the siege hulk's flotation bladders, rig slow fuses. At first light when they haul anchor to approach, the barrels burst. The scorpion hulks sink, drowning their alchemical bolts. With those gone, our cliff scorpions command the bay. The lions will withdraw or charge. And if they charge, Regal strikes from above, we from shore. But only after their bolt supply sinks. Dario grinned savage. I volunteer. Grey worm, unsullied row. No noise. Barristan nodded solemn assent. Kinvara lifted chin. My fires can mask theirs until fuse catches. Mists brew this night, omen helpful. Daenerys's gaze softened, a glint almost paternal toward Tyrion. You risk much for us. I owe more than risk, he murmured, voice thick. The spider died for his choice, I intend it not be in vain. Later, alone on the terrace as moons climbed, Daenerys found him. Flames from a brazier painted her cheekbones amber. She offered him a cup of mulled date wine. He accepted, warmth bleeding through tin to palm. Varys was your friend, she said. He believed in realms where small folk need not fear great lords. Tyrion swallowed. He mistook me for a key to that realm. Perhaps he was right. Keys turned both ways. He stared at the harbor, siege hulks silhouettes like dark tombstones on the water. If we fail tonight, I've only changed which kingdom burns. His voice cracked. I am tired of ash, your grace. She set her hand atop his on the cup, steady. Then let's forge something new from it. For a fragile moment they stood thus, two survivors bound by fire. Night's veil thickened into river mist. 6 skiffs slit the water, or strokes time to waves hush. Tyrion rowed amidships of the central boat, torch unlit to guard night's cloak. Dario crouched a bow, grin white. Grey Worm's silhouette rode rhythm similar to a smith's hammer tapping. Beside Tyrion, a barrel of oil sloshed with each dip, fuse trailing like a rat's tail onto the deck. Kinvara's skiff preceded them, its lone lantern shuddered to a pinched ember. She muttered in Rhoynar dialect, tracing flame sigils through the air, coaxing fog to curl thicker about the flotilla. Tyrion felt droplets bead on lashes. They reached the first hulk, an ugly broad-beam monstrosity named Lion's Pride painted on side. 2 low lanterns bobbed above deck, guards half-dozed. Skiffs glided beneath overhang between pontoons. Dario slipped grapnels, silently climbed hull, cut the first watchman's throat, caught his body, lowered it like a lover. Unsullied passed up rope. One by one they hoisted barrels, wedged them into recesses where buoyancy bags tied. Tyrion's arms shook from hauling rope with one good limb, but adrenaline numbed pain. He secured fuse to slow match soaked in resin. Kinvara whispered blessing, the match glimmered crimson then faded, ember crawling snail paced. 5 hulks they rigged before a cry split night, some deckhand awakened early. Dario's dagger found throat, but alarm sounded. Horns blared across fleet. Row! Grey Worm ordered. Torches burst along rails. Yet fog clung thick, crossbow bolts hissed blind. They reached distance as first barrel ignited, whump like a dragon's cough. Flames licked down hull, tarred planks shuddered. A second hulk blossomed orange, then green as oil found weapon stockpiles of wildfire. An emerald column roared skyward and sailors screamed, silhouettes flung into scorching sea. Tyrion's shielded face, heat-seared hair tips. Kinvara stood in bow, arms raised, robe whipping, eyes incandescent. She chanted, wind seemed to roar with her. Fire jumped from ship to ship as if guided by unseen breath. Soon the bay's center became a cauldron of burning hulks. Siege towers collapsed inward, scorpion arms melting like wax crucifixes. From Meereen's cliffs, scorpion crews cheered. Bells pealed, a makeshift iron optimism clanging across the water. Lion galleys not yet aflame tacked frantically, cut anchor lines, oars beating. One collided with flaming hulk and burst alight. Another turned to flee but met Regal diving from clouds, wings buffeting, jaws disgorging orange furnace. The ship's mast erupted, men jumped overboard, armor dragging them. On the Lady Rhiannon vessel, torch signals flashed, retreat. Tyrion watched through spyglass even as skiff bumped quay. He saw her on quarterdeck, pale plume whipping, face taut. For an instant their gazes met across water, he lifted 2 fingers in mocking toast. She turned away, ordering sails. Dawn framed the destruction, 7 hulks gutted, 3 galleys drowned, the rest fleeing ragged. Green fire still danced atop waves like spectral serpents before sputtering beneath tide. Regal wheeled thrice, triumphant roar echoing canyon loud, then glided back toward the city. Tyrion, dripping, staggered ashore. Barristan clasped his shoulder. The old knight's smile, seldom seen, glimmered. Well played. Some plays, Tyrion panted, are desperate flails disguised as strategy. He looked skyward where pale sun climbed. But the board stands. Grey Worm approached. Many unsullied injured. None lost. Mission victory. Dario punched Tyrion's good arm. You'd make a decent cell sail yet. Kinvara simply bowed. Flame reflection in her pupils like twin halos. Lord of Light accepted the offering. Dawn's forge glows. Tyrion managed a weary chuckle. Let's hope he hammers gently. They ascended the shattered steps to the Great Pyramid. Word of victory spread ahead of them like wind fans spark. Freedmen lined avenues, lifting loaves they'd been gifted, some chanting in broken Valyrian. Mysadrenaries, Mysadralio, Dragon Mother, Lion Brother. Tyrion's pulse stuttered. Brother. The word both warmed and haunted. In the council hall, Daenerys awaited. Her smile when she saw him lit dim chamber brighter than torches. Twice you've delivered me from Lannister claws, she said. Thrice, perhaps, he mused, if you count the time I did not stab you in the back for my sister's coin. She stepped close. Then name a reward before prophecy and politics ruin the chance. His mouth went oddly dry. So many quips stirred, wine casks, brothels, castle seats. Instead he heard himself say, when this war is done, grant me leave to rebuild a library in this city, open to freed and noble, filled with histories unburned. He swallowed. I was shaped by words more than swords. Let others be. Daenerys' eyes glistened. It is yours. Let us fill it together. Tyrion bowed, dizzy, not from fatigue but from hope's rare altitude. Yet even as cheers drifted from streets below, a raven fluttered onto the sill. Missandei retrieved the scroll, brows knitting. She read, voice trembling. From Yukai War Council, she translated. They concede harbor rights. They relinquish all claims to Meereen in exchange for free trade and right to purchase grain at fair price. She paused. Signed also by representatives of Astapor and New Guys. Silence fell. Barristan exhaled slow. Dario whistled. Yora's tired grin returned. Tyrion's knees nearly buckled. Victory, he thought. Real, not Pyrrhic. He raised gaze to Daenerys. Tears shimmered on her lashes but did not fall. Chains will break, she whispered. But chain wheels had long memories. Another raven awaited, its scroll sealed in black wax. Tyrion opened it alone on the balcony later. For words. I will burn you. No signature, but none needed. He clenched the parchment until blood seeped through his bandage. Behind him, dawn gilded Meereen's rebuilt banners fluttering above smoldering ruins, and for the first time since fleeing Westeros, Tyrion felt the world tilt away from old shadows. Yet the letter coiled in his fist, a viper that would strike eventually. Cersei would not relent, war's eye only blinked. He breathed deep of salt and ash and baking bread. Come then, sister, he murmured to the horizon. The dragon and the dwarf await. And far below, the city, Phoenix bright in day's newborn light, took its next uneven breath, daring to believe the dawn might actually belong to them. A half-moon floated over Meereen like a tarnished coin, its silvery glow smudged by thin veils of smoke still seeping from gutted warehouses along the riverfront. By that wan light, Tyrion could make out the patchwork of fresh scaffolds clinging to the Great Pyramid, each level lit by guttering tar-pitch torches that cast fluttering shadows of carpenters and stonecutters across the pale limestone. The pyramid itself had begun to feel less like a tomb atop which he plotted and more like a hive, in every corridor the hum of hammers, the rasp of chisels, the low drone of scribes cataloging salvage. It pleased him in ways he never would have guessed. There was something oddly soothing about hearing a city rebuild itself instead of destroy itself. Below the eastern terrace, Daenerys and Missandei picked their careful way among rows of makeshift tents where healers tended the burned and the maimed. No horns, no drums, no fanfare. The queen simply moved from mattress to mattress, stooping to speak names and press water flasks to lips. Tyrion watched unseen from a high embrasure, one hand wrapped around a cup of watered wine cooling in the night breeze. Whenever Daenerys paused at a cot, the patient's eyes brightened as if a candle had been set inside the skull. It astonished him how much power lived in a single act of listening. He drank and felt the wine linger bitter on the back of his tongue. Power was an ale that went to the head quickly. Daenerys had decided to water hers, and he loved her a little for it. Grey Worm joined him presently, silent as a shadow, though the white dressing on the commander's left bicep spoke of wounds still knitting. The unsullied leader stood with hands clasped behind his back, studying the queen's progress. She shows strength, Grey Worm said at last. And vulnerability, Tyrion replied without looking away. 2 blades in 1 scabbard. Makes her unpredictable even to herself. Grey Worm gave a single solemn nod, accepting the insight without judgment. Unsullied trained to be 1 blade only, which is why the Harpies never understood you. Tyrion drained his cup. Did your scouts confirm the northern road is secure? Secure within 5 miles. Beyond, bandits. Many wear masks of gold but fight for plunder. Tyrion made a noncommittal sound. Bandits are like weeds, you prune them and they grow back thicker. Perhaps tomorrow we speak of seed grain and plowshares for the villages. Hungry men make poor neighbors. Grey Worm permitted himself the faintest curl at the corner of his mouth. Tomorrow. They parted. Tyrion limped along an inner gallery where oil lamps painted the frescoes in ochre gloom. Each fresco told some old Giscari legend. Hero wrestles jaguar, priestess teaches slaves to read the stars, a king kneels before a comet. He stopped before a panel depicting a child offering bread to a chained dragon. The paint had cracked along the dragon's eye, making it appear to weep. You look lonely, he whispered to the child, but at least you still have bread. He reached inside his doublet and withdrew a crust saved from supper. With theatrical ceremony, he pressed it to the stone child's palm, then laughed at himself and pocketed the crust again. Madness nips at dwarfs sooner than at others, he thought, and stalked on. 2 mornings later, the first official summit convened between Meereen and the Tri-Cities of Slavers Bay. The queen received Yunkai's envoys in a sun-washed courtyard bright with bougainvillea, the stones still bearing heat from dragonfire days before. Hisdar Zo Lorak served as translator, though Tyrion suspected the perfumed merchant could have saved his breath. Daenerys understood enough Giskery to sense every hesitation in her guests' voices. Envoys bowed low, proffering gifts. Bolts of indigo silk, spice chests, a slim boy with cat-green eyes and a trained soprano voice who, upon Daenerys's raised hand, was gently escorted back to his minder without ever opening his mouth. Tyrion observed the exchange from a cedar bench, scribbling notes. At his elbow sat a grizzled Astapori scribe named Korst, whose quill scratched furiously. When the formalities ended, Daenerys spoke in Valyrian, measured, clear, unbejeweled. Trade will resume tomorrow. You will pay every stevedore a wage equal to what his chains once cost you. No man or woman shall be bought or sold within 100 leagues. Caravan tolls reduced by half for any merchant who hires freedmen at fair coin. Fail these terms once, and my dragons will weigh the debt. The elder envoy, a eunuch draped in lapis beads, inclined his head. Your Grace's mercy is iron. The phrase trembled between compliment and complaint. Later, Tyrion found Hisdar pacing outside the council chamber wringing scented handkerchiefs. The dwarf blocked his path. Something troubles our friend? Hisdar's kohl-ringed eyes darted. She crushes the masters with one hand while extending the other to starve them. Lower tolls? Fair wages? Madness. He lowered his voice. You counseled her. Tell me gold still buys influence. Gold buys bread, Tyrion said. Influence costs far more: trust, respect, imagination. Choose which you prefer. Hisdar swallowed, perhaps choking on the taste of imagination, and withdrew. Tyrion marked the encounter. The man might yet prove an ally or a dagger, and sometimes they were the same. Night again, and the pyramid library took form faster than carpenters could erect rafters. Tyrion spent hours amid piles of singed scrolls salvaged from merchants' hoards, ledgers, medical treatises, erotic poems, astrology charts. One charred codex dated to the final Giskery dynasty, its ink flaked like dried blood whenever he turned a page. He sealed it in wax cloth and set it aside for preservation. A scratch of slippers announced Kinvara. She glided between lantern posts, robe embers pulsing with each step. She lifted a half-burnt scroll titled The 9 Masks of Magon the Just and smiled. History saved from fire, she murmured. A few words, a fragile skin, yet men die by thousands to defend them. Or to silence them, Tyrion replied, stacking scrolls. My father believed books little more than prestige ornaments. He'd feast the flames himself given half an excuse. Fathers leave ashes, children decide whether to scatter or sculpt them. Kinvara traced a fingertip across a scorch mark. The night I doused the hulks, the flames showed me a vision, a silver helm crowned with black feathers rising above a sea of corpses while a white dragon circled overhead breathing light instead of fire. Her eyes slipped half shut. Interpretation is treacherous, but light that heals rather than burns, perhaps redemption. Tyrion exhaled. If you start calling me Azor Ahai, I'll leap from the balcony. No, she chuckled. Legends choose their own flesh. You are no savior, only a hinge. History turns on hinges. He could not decide whether that comforted him. Midweek brought reports of masked killers skulking the southern warehouses, former harpies consorting with newcomers bearing lion sigil daggers. Barristan doubled patrols, Grey Worm-armed freedmen militias for alley watch. Tyrion carried a whetted dirk hidden beneath his belt but prayed never to test his mangled limb against a younger cutthroat. One evening, returning from a grain tally, he took a shortcut through Perfume Court, a narrow lane where jasmine vines still fragranced rubble. A shadow detached from a doorway, steel flashing. He ducked, the blade cut air above his head. Pain lanced his shoulder, he tripped on a broken tile, rolled behind an overturned stall. The assassin leaped, only to meet the cudgel of Podrick Payne, who had trailed his lord since dusk with a hunch something foul to come. Podrick's swing cracked bone, the attacker crumpled. Tyrion wheezed, my thanks. He pressed fingers to fresh blood at his scalp. I thought you were cataloging rations? Finished early, sire. Podrick nudged the body. From the cloak spilled a clasp, lion rampant. Tyrion grimaced. Lady Rhiannon's reach again. This time more personal. They brought the assassin to the cells below the pyramid. Under questioning Barristan's, not Tyrion's, the man admitted he was one of 20 infiltrators hired from Lysian Bladesingers, each tasked with sowing panic and killing the dwarf if chance allowed. Tyrion admired the Lysians' bold rates, 200 gold stags each, paid half in advance by a woman in black armor. Daenerys received the news with lips pressed thin. Heads on spikes will not end this, she said. We must show the lions their claws break on dragon hide. She convened council that very hour. There, Tyrion suggested a countermove as old as intrigue. Transform would-be blades into secret messengers. Spare 3, he said. Send them back to their mistress bearing tales of unrest. Civil war brewing, dragons sick, queen cornered. Lure Cersei into overconfidence. When her next fleet sails, we choose the battlefield. Deceit invites counter-deceit, Barristan cautioned. So does breathing invite choking, Tyrion retorted. Yet we still breathe. Daenerys approved. 3 prisoners left Meereen at dawn, watched by hooded priests who whispered blessings that sounded like curses. Tyrion doubted any would survive the voyage. Rhiannon was not known for mercy toward failure, but perhaps one lie carried half alive would suffice. Weeks slid past in a dance of mortar and treaty. Markets reopened. Laughter returned to wine shops. Children wove straw dragons they soaked in oil and ignited at dusk to watch them tumble across cobbles and sparks. Tyrion's library sprouted walls of cedar and windows of oiled paper. He spent mornings there cataloging, afternoons drafting decrees, nights sipping spiced pulque atop the pyramid with Yora and Dario while stars brawled with city lights. One starless pre-dawn, Regal landed on the terrace, talons clacking, a fresh kill aurochs dangling from jaws. The dragon's wing, once tatters, now showed sutures of cured ibex hide stitched by Carthene healers. Regal dropped the carcass near a brazier, looked at Tyrion, and huffed steam scented of raw blood. Tyrion, alone at that hour, bowed low. A lovely gift, he said. I'd offer reciprocity, but goats dislike my company. Regal lowered his head. Tyrion's breath fogged in the dragon's nostrils. On impulse, he reached out and laid his sound hand against a scale the size of a buckler. It was warm, pulsing slow. A thrill shot up his spine, a mingling of terror and wonder so pure it felt like childhood. My sister thinks to bleed you, he whispered, but you have more blood than the Iron Throne has stones. Regal's pupils narrowed to slits unreadable. After a heartbeat, the dragon turned, wings sweeping air so forcefully Tyrion staggered. Regal leaped skyward, tail flicking a gust that snuffed the brazier. Tyrion stood in dark, heart hammering. The first major test of the new peace came in the form of a plague cart from Astapor, a caravan of refugees swollen with red pox. Their sores wept through bandages, children already moaned in fever. Meereen's gate guards barred them on orders, no contagion inside walls. The refugees camped beyond the aqueduct, wails drifting into the city. Daenerys rode out with 100 healers. Tyrion followed on a short donkey named Inkblot, complaining the entire way. They found the camp stinking of necrosis. Daenerys dismounted, strode among the sick, and knelt to tend a woman whose face peeled like dried fig skin. Tyrion observed the crowd hush when the queen touched a pustule without flinching. He pulled aside a healer. Are we courting epidemic? Perhaps, the woman answered. But quarantine alone breeds revolt. Hope heals too. Tyrion sighed. Hope does not scrub latrines. Nonetheless, he drafted a plan. Quarantined pavilions beyond the wall, separate wells, supply wagons thrice daily. He promised double wages to any freedman who volunteered inside plague lines and triple to any healer. Within a fortnight, infection curve bent downward. The camp began to chant Queen's name each dawn. Tyrion made certain they also cheered the healers. One grows loyalty by sharing credit. When he told Daenerys, she smiled. You have a talent for numbers disguised as wisdom. And you have a talent for grace disguised as stubbornness, he replied. They clinked cups of persimmon wine. Months crept. Spring zephyrs carried hints of rain from the summer sea. Wheat sprouted in hinterlands. Trade convoys from Karth arrived not with slaves but with opals, perfumes, scholars. One scholar delivered 10 crates of Valyrian histories once housed in the lost citadel of Volantis. Tyrion nearly wept, stamping the library seal on each vellum spine. Yet amid prosperity a rumble persisted, the knowledge that Cersei's next move brewed beyond horizons. Ravens brought shreds of rumor, Ire-born longships marshalling at Old Wyke, Sellsword companies amassing near Mere, King's Landing gold cloaks drilling daily beneath newly built scorpion towers that dwarfed those Blackwater engines. One raven, however, bore good tidings from Dorne. Prince Quentyn Martell, fresh from his failed courtship with dragons, wrote to Tyrion an apology for past deceptions and a pledge. Dorne would not block any Targaryen fleet sailing for Westeros. Tyrion brought the scroll to Daenerys at once. Prince Quentyn regrets his rash attempt, he said, and offers port at Sunspear for resupply. Daenerys read, eyes hooded. He risked my dragon's wrath for his father's ambition. She folded the scroll. But a prince who learns from failure is rarer than one who never fails. We shall accept? Tyrion nodded. Then the first stone of our bridge to Westeros is set. He did not mention the other scroll in his pocket, black wax. Once again, your bridge is built of corpses. I will pull every stone. Cersei's handwriting, unmistakable. He burned it that night in the brazier where Rhaegal had left his gift. Summer's threshold arrived with thunderstorms that rattled the pyramid windows. On one such night Tyrion worked late, drafting shipping tariffs when Podrick burst in, drenched. Sire, the Lady Rhiannon captured. Tyrion dropped his quill. Speak. Podrick relayed. A Stormcrow patrol sighted a sleek pinnace anchored in the estuary under storm cover. Unsullied boarded, below decks they found barrels of scorpion bolts tipped with laminate of green crystal, more wildfire. Lady Rhiannon commanded the pinnace herself. She fought, but Grey Worm's shield cracked her helm. She lay now in chains. Within an hour Tyrion stood in the dungeon, face to face with his cousin. Her white horsehair plume was gone, hair matted to skull. One eye swollen. Little cousin, she mocked through split lip. Come to gloat. No, he said quietly, to ask why you risked capture instead of sailing home. Cersei does not abide failure, Rhiannon whispered. Better to die striking than rot beneath her scorn. So you chose a slower death here? Her laugh rasped. I chose a chance. Do you imagine you and your Silver Queen can hold forever? Westeros kneels to lions. This city will bleed again. Tyrion stepped closer. Cities bleed, but some wounds heal to scar tissue harder than original flesh. He studied her face, saw the pride and fear swirling like twin snakes. Help us and you may yet keep your head. She spat blood. Help you? Betray my queen. Your queen sent you to die. He paused. But I do not need your betrayal, only your silence. Your fleet still roams, looking for signals. Write a letter bidding them anchor at a cove 50 leagues east. We'll seize their stores without bloodshed. In exchange you sail to Lys under safe passage, never again wearing lion crimson. She stared. Banishment. An alternative to headsman. You can trade stories of dragonfire for coin. It is a sword of freedom. Silence weighed heavy. Finally she nodded once. Tyrion let breath escape. He left herself feeling older than his years. Daenerys endorsed the bargain next morning. A lioness declawed may limp, but she still remembers the savannah, she cautioned. Tyrion assured her the risk outweighed the cost. Grey Worm sailed with 2 galleys to claim the anchor cove. They returned with 6 lion ships and holds stuffed with salted beef, amber wine, Myrish crossbows. The city feasted that week in victory not won by blades but ink. Late that summer, the library opened. Dawn streamed through lattice windows onto rows of varnished cedar shelves. The first visitors were children from plague camp, now recovered. Tyrion led them between stacks, telling tales of Nymeria's 10,000 ships and the field of fire. He knelt by a low shelf, pulled a battered codex bound in cracked leather, and handed it to a boy. Every word is a sword sharper than bronze, he said. But swords cut 2 ways. Promise to cut ignorance, not truth. The boy, gap-toothed, solemnly vowed so. Later, as dusk slanted through shutters, Tyrion sat alone amid the hush, feeling something settle inside, a weight easing, not increasing. The world outside still bristled with siege towers and poisoned letters, but here within these walls words survive crucibles. He closed his eyes and for a moment imagined his father stepping through the doorway, scowling at shelves lined with thoughts no sword could silence. The dwarf smiled. Days shortened. Caravels from Pentos massed in harbor, their captains affirming allegiance. Unsullied drilled daily with new recruits drawn from freedmen eager to earn coin, pride, or both. Scorpions on the cliffs glittered in the sun like watchful owls. Above, dragons wheeled larger, stronger, wings healed. On a crisp evening crackling with autumn promise, Daenerys summoned Tyrion to the rooftop garden redolent of lemon blossom. She wore a cloak of midnight wool clasped by the dragon hand brooch he had once taken from her desk for a jest. Now it adorned her throat like destiny. We sail within a month, she said. The city stands. It must learn to walk without my shadow. Tyrion gazed at distant glow where craftsmen still forged plates for hulls. It will, if you leave the right guardians. Barristan will remain as Lord Protector. Missandei, Grey Worm, and half the Unsullied. Hisdar and the Freedmen Council share rule. She touched a jasmine bloom, thoughtful. But I cannot leave without my hand. He inhaled sea-tinged night. I imagined as much. I need your tongue more than your sword, she said. "And your book of debts?" Tyrion chuckled. "I thought we burned the last ledger." "Some debts," she answered, "are paid in tomorrows." She held out a small scroll tied with red silk. He opened it, a royal decree naming him Lord of Dragon's Hearth, Shield of the Dawn Standard, and Hand of the Queen in perpetuity until relieved by her word or by death. "No castle?" he quipped, but emotion clogged his throat. "Castles crumble. Stories endure." Her smile was gentle. "You built a library instead." He bowed deeply, the sea wind trailing his cloak like a banner bannerless. When he straightened, Daenerys looked west, toward the invisible line where black water met darker sky. "Westeros waits. Cersei waits. But I am not the girl she imagines. I am the woman this city forged from ruin." "And I," Tyrion said, "am the dwarf who helped stoke the fire that tempered that steel. Let us see if the forges of King's Landing burn hotter." They stood together on the parapet as the moon climbed, silent but for the distant roar of surf and the rustle of jasmine petals falling, white stars drifting earthward to join the story already written in ash and blood and hope. And below, Meereen breathed, a slow vast breath, once ragged, now steadier, preparing to exhale its queen, and her hand across the sea toward a destiny lit by dragon fire and the white blaze of redemption yet to be proven. Black banners flapped over the line of new scorpions on the western cliffs, each tassel cracking in the wind like the snap of a wet sail. Dawn limped toward Meereen in bruised violet and copper, an uncertain sunrise that suggested storms prowling the eastern horizon. Tyrion Lannister stood atop the Great Pyramid's uppermost terrace, eyelids grainy from too little sleep, and watched the waves go pewter under the first light. Beyond the harbor mouth, 12 Pentoshi caravels dozed at anchor, their lanterns extinguished. They would weigh tomorrow on a testing voyage, 50 miles down coast, back again, to school rowers and let Regal accustom himself to winging over rigging and spars. After that, if winds and omens aligned, they would become the seed of a Targaryen invasion flotilla. Even now Tyrion felt a tremor of disbelief. That bedraggled Meereen, not Braavos or old Volantis, had forged this alliance. That he, a disgraced dwarf once bound for exile in a wine barrel, now carried the Silver Queen's signet. In his youth, the world had seemed ruled by broad-shouldered giants. Tywin, Stannis, Robert, great men in steel suits stepping on beetles. Now only ghosts remained, and the beetles wore mail. Boot steps approached, measured, heavy, and he did not need to turn to know Ser Barristan Selmy had come for the morning report. Tyrion tapped the parchment against his palm. 2 more infiltrators flushed from the Coppersmith district, he said without preamble. One wore a lion brooch under his tunic. The other, annoyingly, insists he is merely a pickpocket. Barristan exhaled frost. A pickpocket with a Myrish stiletto. Ambit. Ion often acquires tools above its station. Tyrion passed him the parchment. Your cells are filling. I recommend gallows tomorrow at dawn, quietly, no spectacle, before the markets bustle. I had thought public justice steadied nerves, Barristan said. So does bread. And bread leaves less blood on paving stones. Tyrion folded his arms, the wind worrying his sleeve. Too many corpses on display and folk begin to fear the Queen's mercy has limits. Mercy must have limits, Barristan muttered. Of course, Tyrion said, but better they remain theoretical. The old knight's eyes roved the harbor, found the caravels, and softened. I never thought to see Pentoshi colors beside 3-headed dragons. Nor that I should command anything larger than a barstool, Tyrion agreed. Yet here we are, stitching a banner big enough to frighten a continent. From far below drifted the metallic staccato of unsullied spear shafts striking shields and drill rhythms. The clang was comforting as a priest's bells to Tyrion. Predictable sound meant discipline, and discipline meant order sturdy enough to bear tomorrow's uncertainties. A gull wheeled in, settled on the parapet rail, eyed them with bright indifference, then flapped off. When its wings cleared, a small figure was revealed climbing the stair. Hisdar zo Lorak, breathing hard, guided by 2 of Grey Worm's lieutenants. Sweat darkened the collar of his brocade jacket. His perfume arrived a heartbeat before he spoke. My lords, he wheezed. A rider from Yunkai. They request an audience at noon, a representative of every merchant guild. They come bearing tribute. Tribute, Tyrion echoed. Our tariffs barely left them coin for candles. Hisdar dabbed his brow. They claim to bring a gift, not payment. A menagerie. Exotic animals for her grace's menagerie, to show goodwill. Barristan's mouth tightened. Or to mask assassins. Tyrion thought a moment. Have the beasts inspected outside the walls, then penned beyond arrow reach. We accept the gesture with smiles and brandished spears. Hisdar inclined his head. As you command, my hand, Tyrion said gently. You needn't bow. A nod suffices. He turned to Barristan. We best convene the council, and perhaps send Regal on a lazy circle at the appointed hour. Nothing intimidates like a shadow with teeth. They descended narrow stairs into the pyramid's throat, torches guttering on damp stone. Inside, the world was a hive of intersecting errands. Scribes carting fresh-inked decrees, armorers lugging bundles of lamellar scales, freed women balancing reed baskets of millet for the western hospitals. Tyrion slipped through the current like a fish in rapids, exchanging curt nods, offering a word here or there. He had grown into this lattice of human motion, and it into him so thoroughly that the memory of Casterly Rock's cold corridors felt remote, a childhood sickness half-remembered. The council chamber's cedar doors swung wide. Daenerys was already there, warming slender hands over a brazier where citrus peels cracked and hissed, releasing bright steam. Kinvara stood behind her, red robes luminescent. Dario lounged on a windowsill, boots muddy from dawn patrol. Yora returned from his reconnaissance along the river Skahazaden, mapped silt bars with flicks of chalk on slate. Tyrion relayed Hisdar's report in brisk strokes. Daenerys listened, eyes flicking from face to face, absorbing. When he finished, she drummed slender fingers. We received them, she decreed, but outside as my hand suggests. And I would have the children of Plague Camp come witness the exchange. Let Yukai see the faces their coins once marked for chains. Kinvara murmured approval. Lawler enjoyed theater. The meeting turned to logistics. Sailcloth shipments from Karth delayed by storms, another triangular scorpion tower nearly finished, salmon runs upriver promising rich stores if nets could be mended. Tyrion took notes, assigned scribes. When discussion waned, Daenerys surprised them with a question directed at him alone. How flows the library? He blinked, heart lifting. We've cataloged 6,000 volumes. A Septon's treatise on the faith militant arrived yesterday, copy dates a century before Aegon's landing. And 3 scrolls of Valyrian folk songs. The children have begun lessons in letters every 4th evening. Her expression softened. When I first crossed the Red Waste, I feared fire would consume every story before I could learn them. Now you rescue them from ashes. Scribes deserve credit, Tyrion said, yet felt warmth unfurl. I merely sort. Dario snorted. Our hand sorts words, Grey Worm sorts skulls, Barristan sorts honor. I begin to wonder what is left for Sel's words. Charm, Tyrion offered. The city still appreciates a good swagger. Dario grinned. The council disbanded. Tyrion pocketed his notes and strode for the library, craving the hush of parchment. But at the threshold a messenger overtook him, Podrick again, cheeks flushed. Sir, urgent letter from Old Town by Shiproost Raven. Tyrion accepted the scroll, recognized the wax, the Hightower's sigil. He unrolled it, scanning lines penned in precise Maester cursive. His pulse stumbled. PGSQL. Lord Hand *. Intelligence from the Reach indicates Queen Regent Cersei has secured the allegiance of House Hightower and the remnants of House Tyrell's bannermen. A fleet of 20 ships, outfitted by the Citadel's artificers, sails within a fortnight to join the Royal Navy at Blackwater Bay. They carry a new pattern of bolt glaive head alloyed with obsidian shards rumored to pierce dragon scale *. Further, whispers speak of a siege mortar delivered from Qyburn's alchemical workshops. Range 2 miles, payload wildfire inside iron shells. It is said the Queen Regent means to reduce any port that harbors the Silver Queen to cinders before she lands. Advise expedition with haste. Maester Calidus, under seal of Lord Leighton Hightower, secret sympathy. Tyrion rolled the parchment, mind racing. Obsidian-tipped bolts could slice softer underbelly plates. Iron-cased wildfire mortar whispered of horrors beyond Blackwater's green inferno. He pivoted, hurrying back to the council chambers. On the stair he nearly collided with Yora. Maester's Crow, he panted. Cersei arms dragon killers. Yora accepted the scroll, eyes narrowing. I sailed past the arbor once, shipyards aplenty. A 20 fleet is no idle rumor. They entered the chamber where Daenerys lingered in quiet conversation with Missandei. Tyrion delivered the news, silence cracked like ice across still water. Kinvara's voice broke it. Obsidian, dragon glass, born of fire and shadow. A blade fit for wounding ancient sins. Dario cursed colorfully. Barristan's jaw set. Daenerys breathed out. She means to deny me landfall. Tyrion said. Port or no port. Rain wildfire from beyond harbor chains. Obsidian bolts once we're trapped at anchor. Grey worm folded arms. We sail around? Farther north, you're amused to White Harbor perhaps, or even Tor's Teeth. But winter storms close that far shore and ravens speak of snows already in Wolfswood. He grimaced. Your dragons may endure cold, your infantry less so. Tyrion tugged beard stubble. We need a harbor before she can fortify every stone. A beach where scorpions can't elevate, steep cliffs behind, reefs ahead. Barristan unrolled coastal charts. Blackwater, Driftmark, Duskendale, all within crown reach. But Storm's End's Cove, narrow, high-walled, once served Robert's smuggler friends. Cersei likely neglects it, trusting her garrison to deter raids. Dario traced a finger. Land there, march inland through Rainwood, avoid main roads. You're a drum table. But Storm's End still holds a castellan loyal to the Iron Throne. We persuade them otherwise, Tyrion said, or slip past before dawn. The essential element is secrecy. He exhaled. And speed. Kinvara's eyes flared. The Lord of Light burns brightest in storms. Daenerys made her decision, ready the fleet within 10 days. We sailed to Storm's End. Tyrion swallowed. 10 days to victual, to finalize drill, to calm a city shivering at rumors of plague revived and lions returning. Yet there was no alternative, delays would only fatten Cersei's quiver. Outside, thunder boomed, the vanguard of an approaching squall. Tyrion felt the vibration in his ribs and thought of iron shells bursting wildfire across docks. He shivered, then squared shoulders. The next morning he rode Inkblot into the eastern foothills, escorted by a column of freedmen archers. Their goal? Inspect a mine recently reopened by enterprising smiths who claimed veins of obsidian near the old Giscari quarry. If true, it might furnish arrowheads that could gouge lion hulls or shear scorpion gears. The road coiled between ridges furred with sagebrush and wiry pines. Rain threatened but held. Tyrion conversed with Foreman Sha'are, a woman whose left arm ended at elbow. She gestured with her stump as naturally as others waved fans. We dig only 3 days, Lord. Black glass lines walls like melted candle wax. Hard to chip, shatters if struck wrong. Obsidian's nature, Tyrion said, dismounting before the dark mouth. He accepted a torch, ducked inside. The tunnel exhaled sulfur and cold. 40 yards in, the walls glittered midnight. He pried a shard free, sleek, razor-edged, and marveled. A memory surfaced, Qyburn telling Queen Cersei how dragon scales might deflect bolt tips but not shards that could break, twist, and burrow deep with the spinning of the shaft. Tyrion pocketed the shard. Mine steadily, he told Sha'are, but save splinters. We'll test arrow fletching with gum resins. When he emerged, rain had begun. Thin rivulets streaked his face. He raised his eyes to a low, black cloud surging inland, a sky like a bruise. Podrick, waiting beside Inkblot, pointed. Storm gathers from north, sire. Appropriate, Tyrion muttered. We gather from south. He mounted. The world will meet in the middle and decide who keeps possession. 10 days became a blur. Looms on the waterfront clattered day and night weaving storm sails. Smithy chimneys coughed sparks, harbor carpenters caulked hull seams with tar that stank halfway to the pyramids. Tyrion slept in snatches on a pallet between library shelves, dreams tangled with quills and the hiss of quenching steel. Every dawn he woke to lists, hide shipments, biscuit rations, replacement rivets for armor cracked in last drill. He discovered joy in crossing items off. The menagerie from Yukai proved less a threat than a puzzle. 6 white peacocks, 3 black-maned lions' cubs, a caged basilisk lizard reputed to hypnotize prey. Daenerys ordered the peacocks freed near the river delta. Let beauty take root, she said. The cubs, after cautious deliberation, were gifted to the plagued children under guard to raise as symbols of strength turned gentle. The basilisk she left in its cage, some gifts remained better imprisoned. On the 8th night the city celebrated Festival of the Unchained, an impromptu holiday Tyrion invented to lift spirits. Bonfires blazed in every ward, acrobats performed atop scaffolds, Kinvara's priests led processions brandishing torches that spelled Valyrian glyphs of rebirth. Daenerys mingled without guards, danced a slow spiral with a scarred freedman missing both ears, cheers thundered whenever they passed. Tyrion toasted with a cup of fig brandy and nearly toppled when Regal swooped overhead trailing blue fireworks lit by alchemical fuses. But dawn after revelry found the harbor hushed. Gulls perched silent on mastheads as if sensing farewell. Sailors coiled lines with reverence. Children hugged lions' cubs goodbye. The cubs yowled, confused by hull creaks and tar stink. Tyrion oversaw loading of library chests onto the flagship Valyrian Grace, copies of maps, treatises on Westerosi law, a cedar crate of blank vellum for chronicles yet unwritten. He could not bear to leave knowledge behind to chance of uprising. By noon the tide turned fair. Daenerys walked the quay flanked not by unsullied spear wall but by the Freedmen Council, his dar included, each bearing a lantern lit from the Great Pyramid's eternal flame, the symbol of their stewardship. She embraced Missandei last, whispering words few heard. The girl's eyes shone. Tyrion boarded last, Podrick at his heels, the gangplank hauled with a jolt. Grey Worm raised a hand in silent salute from the pier. Tyrion returned the gesture, feeling a pang he could not name. Oars dipped. The fleet moved. Atop the pyramid the new dawn standard unfurled, white field, red dragon, broken chains. Wind caught it full, it cracked like thunder above the city they left. Regal rose from a fire-swept courtyard, shadow sweeping across water, then settled to glide above the flagship, wingtips flicking spray. Viserion remained behind, guardian and symbol, his mournful cry echoed, answer and farewell. Waters widened between hulls and harbor. Tyrion leaned on rail, sea salt mist pricking his cheeks, and watched Meereen shrink until pyramids became stunted triangles, until the cliffs hid them entirely. A past chapter closed, pages inked in blood, ash, and improbable hope yet warm still in his ribs. Below deck, scribes awaited final courses for the invasion script. Order of march, siege ladder quotas, field sanitation edicts. Tyrion inhaled the smell of pine pitch and new sails and set his shoulders. Westeros lay ahead, a dormant wound ready to fester or to heal. The queen would need every clever word, every trick of leverage, every scrap of conscience he possessed. He descended companionway stairs into lantern-lit corridor, mindful of the ship's rhythm, the soft thrum of muscle and wood striving together. The sea outside spoke in tongues of foam against planks, telling old stories of leviathans and lost kings. He thought of Cersei, of father, of a castle window where a boy once stared yearning to be tall. The wind moaned through rigging like an answer, height is measured differently now. In the strategy cabin Daenerys unrolled maps across a trestle. Yora, Barristan, and Dario leaned in. She looked up as Tyrion entered, and in her eyes he saw storms reflected, fear, excitement, resolve. "Hannah the Queen," she said, voice low but steady. "Show me how we break a kingdom without breaking its people." Tyrion placed a small wooden lion atop Storm's End on the map. He set beside it a carved three-headed dragon wrought of ebony. Then, very carefully, he placed between them a single candle, lit but shielded so its tiny flame endured the cabin's draft. "First," he replied, "we teach the realm to see difference between a fire that devours and a fire that warms." He met her gaze. "And we pray the wind favors the latter." The hull creaked, the candle flickered, but did not go out. The fleet hugged the coastline for 3 days. Rain swept from the black cliffs, drumming canvas. On deck Tyrion trained groups of archers in knocking obsidian-tipped arrows while the ship pitched. Those who could loose 5 quarrels into a bobbing cask earned an extra ration of rum. Podrick proved dead-eyed, to Tyrion's private delight. One sunset a messenger falcon arrived to Valyrian Grace's mast with a cylinder strapped to its leg. Barristan extracted the parchment. Word from Dornish scouts, Cersei's mortar prototype had misfired during tests, leveling a warehouse and killing Qyburn's chief artificer. A stroke of fortune or the stranger's wink. Tyrion allowed himself a single triumphant gulp of Arbor gold that night. Yet the same raven brought darker news. The faith militant under High Septon Ormond's zeal had denounced all dragon-spawn abominations and proclaimed any city harboring them would suffer divine retribution. Septons across the crownlands whipped crowds into froth, sparrows massed along roads. Tyrion delivered this intelligence to Daenerys under star-washed sky. She sat on coil of rope, hair whipping silver in wind. After reading, she looked toward Regal soaring above the moonlit waves. "They call him abomination," she murmured. "They called me that too once." "Fear shapes ugly prayers," Tyrion said, settling beside her. "But fear can be turned." "How?" "By showing people the shape of a world where they needn't fear." He shrugged. "Or by frightening them into silence. I prefer the first. Sometimes the second buys time." She chuckled, a tired sound. "You always have 2 answers. Because the truth sits somewhere between." A lull followed, broken only by gull cries. Tyrion ventured, "We might seek alliance with the faith rather than contest. They hunger for order after chaos." Offer them seats at a council to redress grievances against lords who grew fat during war. She regarded him sidelong. Appease zeal with compromise? Won't that embolden them? It will divide them. Those who prefer negotiation will temper those who thirst for blood. So long as we hold the table, we choose which cups are filled. She pondered, then nodded slowly. Very well. Draft proposals. Generic enough to adapt once we set foot on Westerosi soil. He smiled, though fatigue gnawed him. I live to draft. Lightning flickered far to west. Summer storms battling autumn's onset. The fleet rode steady, sails billowed, prows sliced foam. Tyrion felt the hum of transformation inside the hull timbers, a sense that history itself was shifting weight from stern to bow. 6 days out, a foremast lookout spied gulls wheeling inland, sign of shoaled shallows and rocky headlands. Storm's End's Cove lay beyond. At midnight, Daenerys called final council. They gathered in dim hold: Tyrion, Yora, Barristan, Dario, Kinvara, Captain Lissaro of the Pentoshi flagship. Maps spread again, pebbles for units. Tyrion laid out infiltration, 100 unsullied in fishermen skiffs wading surf, disabling lantern beacons along cliff stair. At first light, dragons fly overhead at height but refrain from flame, shadow alone enough to stall garrison archers. Landing parties secure tide pools, establish perimeter. 2 days to repair old pier pilings for trebuchet offload. March inland on the third morning. Dario objected. Better strike Castellan on first night. Surprise buys loyalty. Surprise buys corpses too, Tyrion countered. We avoid burning potential allies in their beds. Barristan backed the hand. Yora deferred. Daenerys sealed the plan with crisp nod. Kinvara produced vials of luminous oil for night beacons. Light without fire, she claimed. A trick of alchemic salts. Tyrion hoped. Retiring to his cabin, Tyrion meant to sleep. Instead, he found Podrick sitting on a sea chest, polishing a new dagger. Sir, Podrick said timidly. Might I fight beside the skiff crew? Tyrion eyed the youth's earnest face. Pod, your worth is here. Messages. Sums. Ready quills. I've practiced sword every night with Ser Barristan's squires, Podrick insisted. I can stand my ground. Tyrion sighed. Battle rarely rewards bravery with living. He placed a hand on Pod's shoulder. But I will not cage lions if they must roar. Take shield and helm. Stay behind shield wall. And if I find you chasing glory, I will personally assign you to the sanitation corps for a year. Podrick grinned crookedly. Yes, sir. Tyrion shooed him out, then extinguished the lamp and lay back, listening to waves slap hull planks. He thought of Varys' sown eyes, of Lady Rhiannon's uncertain exile, of Cersei sharpening obsidian bolts in torchlight. He drifted into uneasy dream, standing before the Iron Throne, which melted into a weeping child of Stan. He holding bread to a chained dragon, and the dragon wept wildfire that etched the child's bones in glass. He woke before dawn, sweat damp, but mind clear. They sighted Cape Wrath at noon, jagged rocks sheathed in surf, gulls shrieking. Storm's End itself lay half hidden by mist further north, but the narrow cove winked behind a dogleg of cliffs, exactly as charts promised. Masts were lowered, sails furled, oars shipped. Skiffs slid into water, dark shadows beneath. Tyrion boarded the lead skiff with Grey Worm, Podrick, and 10 unsullied archers. Regal flapped high overhead, a silent sentinel. Waves pitched, spray licked. The skiff's hull grated shingle as they grounded. Tyrion's boots splashed into knee-high surf cold enough to bite bone. He waited, heart hammering, the cliff wall looming black above. Grey Worm's men ascended goat paths known to smugglers. They carried padded mallets, not swords. The plan demanded quiet. Minutes crawled. A gull cried once, then silence. From the heights came 3 flashes of cold blue lamp oil, the signal. Lantern beacons snuffed. Tyrion let breath out he hadn't realized he held. He gestured, more skiffs rode in, men spilling onto sand. Barristan led second wave, not quite as quiet as Unsullied but deadly quick. They scaled a weed-slick stair, found guards asleep in small stone tower, bound them before they could shout. Inside, Tyrion counted barrels of resin and oil, beacon supplies. He smiled, now their supplies. By dawn's flush, the entire landing perimeter secured. Daenerys came ashore astride a tall bay mare borrowed from Lysaro's stables. Her cloak whipped, eyes shining. Regal descended to Boulder Crest, wings folding, breath steaming. Sunlight gilded dragon and queen alike. Tyrion approached. "We hold the beach? Then the real test begins," she said. She looked inland, forested hills rising into storm-black clouds. "What lies on the other side?" "Fate," Tyrion answered, surprising himself. She smiled. "And dragons." March banners unfurled, red on white, broken chains. Unsullied formed columns, Sellsword companies flanked, Dornish scouts rode ahead. They advanced into the green gloom of the rainwood, leaving the sea to erase footprints. Tyrion rode behind the vanguard on an aging gelding, inkblot delivered earlier by Sling Crane. Podrick trotted beside, visor down, nerves vibrating. Tyrion lifted his gaze to the canopy. Broad leaves dripped silver. Thrush songs wove with creak of leather harness. The path smelled of loam, rot, and possibility. By afternoon, they reached a ruined watchtower long abandoned. Dario scrambled up and waved. Road clear ahead. Yet at dusk scouts returned with a prisoner. A Storm's End outrider captured while relieving himself on an oak. Tyrion questioned him beside a fire. "Garrison size?" he asked. The man, frightened but defiant, spat. 50 green boys, 2 knights, 1 maester. Castellan Lord Tarth hunts bandits. Gone a fortnight. Barristan arched brow. An empty keep. Still stone walls, Tyrion said. But perhaps stone doors swing on welcome hinges. Midnight council under tarp, they decided to negotiate. At first light, Daenerys, Barristan, and Tyrion rode under white banner toward the ancient fortress, gray walls jutting over sea cliffs. Regal perched distant but visible. The castle gates opened before they knocked. A boy of 16 in boiled leather breastplate greeted them, eyes huge. Behind, swaddled townsfolk peered. Wildfire stories had preceded the queen, but also plague healing rumors. Tyrion spoke gently, "We seek anchorage, not conquest. Lay down arms and the realm may yet find peace without fire." The boy Cersei, Tartha's page, led them to Great Hall. Fires crackled, banners sagged dusty. Only one knight remained, a graybeard with palsy. He knelt at once. By noon, Storm's End raised the dawn standard beside its own sigil, a yellow sunburst behind a crescent moon. Daenerys accepted homage on the ramparts, blue waves smashing far below. Ravens were dispatched to lords of the Stormlands. The Dragon Queen offered clemency, grain, and representation if they renounced the lion. Tyrion penned each letter, sealing with wax bearing both three-headed dragon and the new lion library sigil he'd quietly designed, a golden lion reading an open book. Podrick laughed at that. Tyrion called it symbolism, the past read by the present to forge future. Night came, and with it, distant glint of rams' prows on southern horizon, Cersei's vanguard, perhaps unaware the cove now bristled with dragon-loyal scorpions. Tyrion stood atop Storm's End battlements with a goblet of sour red and watched lightning spider across clouds behind the enemy sails. He did not feel fear, only a taut readiness, like bowstring drawn. Daenerys joined him. Below, Regal roost on a trebuchet platform, tail wrapped around timbers. "Tomorrow," she said. "Tomorrow," he echoed. He lifted his cup to the Black Sea. To bridges built of tomorrows. She touched the rim with her fingertip. And to the hinges on which they turn. Ships drew nearer, dim lanterns swaying. The storm broke behind them, wind rushing forth, a herald clarion. Rain sheeted across the battlements, plastering Tyrion's hair, but he felt warm. The dragon raised his head and roared, a thunder-deep note that rolled over waves, over ships, over distant hills, announcing the union of lion and dragon in a chorus of fire and ink. Below, the sea answered with clap of surf like pages turning, as if history itself leaned forward to read what came next.